say. "Oh, shut up," he snapped. "You're my best friend, you jerk. Like I'm going to let you go face all this alone. I'm in. I'm in to rescue Tom. That's it. Then I'm done." Only Cassie had remained silent. She was looking dreamily off over the heads of the mall crowd. "You know, back in the old days, I mean the real old days, the
What the heck is this?
Haven't seen him in a couple of weeks. But hey, you should talk to his yoga instructor. I'd be happy to take you back.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd appreciate that more than you can imagine. It'd be such a... Oh, you are naked.
Huh? Oh, for sure. We're a nationalist club.
In Zootopia, anyone can buy anything. These guys, they be naked.
Gandhi's just on the other side of the pleasure
Does this make you uncomfortable? Because if so, there's no shame in calling it quits.
Yes, there is.
Boy, that's a spirit.
Some mammals say the naturalist life is weird, but you know what I say is weird? Clothes on animals. Here we go. As you can see, Nangi's an elephant, so she'll totally remember everything. Hey, Nangi, these dudes have some questions about Emmett the otter.
Who?
Emmett Otterton, been coming to your yoga class for like 6 years.
I have no memory of this beaver.
He's an otter, actually?
He was here a couple of Wednesdays ago, remember?
Nope.
Yeah, he was wearing a green cable knit sweater vest and a new pair of corduroy slacks. Oh, and a paisley tie, sweet Windsor knot, real tight. Remember that, Nangi?
No.
Yeah, we both walked him out, and he got into this big old white car with a silver trim. Needed a tune-up. The third cylinder wasn't firing. Remember that, Nangi?
Nope.
You didn't happen to catch the license plate number, did you?
Oh, for sure. It was 29THD03.
03. Wow. This is a lot of great info. Thank you.
Told you Nangi has a mind like a steel trap. Oh, I wish I had a memory like an elephant.
That's so good.
Okay. The early Europeans, the Native Americans, they all believed animals had spirits, and they would call on those spirits to protect them from evil. They would ask the spirit of the fox for his cunning. They'd ask the spirit of the eagle for his sight. They would ask the lion for his strength. I guess what we're doing is sort of basic. Even though it was Andalite technology that made it possible, we're still just scared little humans trying to borrow the mind of the fox and the eyes of the eagle, or the hawk, she added, smiling at Tobias, and the strength of the lion. Just like thousands of years ago, we're calling on the animals to help protect us from evil. Will their strength be enough? I wondered. I don't know, Cassie admitted solemnly. It's like all the basic forces of planet Earth are being brought into the battle. Marco rolled his eyes. Nice story, Cassie, but we're 5 normal kids, up against the Yerks. If it was a football game, who would you bet on? We're toast. Don't be so sure, Cassie said. We're fighting for Mother Earth. She has some tricks up her sleeves. Good grief, Marco said. Let's all buy Birkenstocks and go hug some trees. We all laughed, including Cassie. Cassie's right about one thing, Rachel said seriously. The only thing we have going for us is this animal morphing thing. And so far, the only morphs we've acquired are a cat, a bird, a dog, a horse, and a lizard. I think we need a little more firepower. We should head for the garden. We need... Chapter 20. A male Siberian tiger, to be exact, 10 feet long, 700 pounds of deadly speed, unbelievable power. You know those old Tarzan movies you see on TV sometimes, where Tarzan is wrestling a tiger, and actually winning? Let me tell you something. You want to know what your chances are of wrestling a tiger and coming out alive? They're about the same as your chances of jumping off the Empire State Building and surviving. I have an idea, Marco said shakily. Let's leave. Don't run, I said. It might just get his attention. I think he's noticed us, Marco said. I think he knows we're here, Jake. I think he's looking right at us. Look at his teeth! Don't freak. I have an idea. The morphing. If I acquire him, it'll put him in a trance. Acquire? Acquire what? You can't acquire anything about him. He's the acquirer, and you're the acquiree. He's going to acquire your butt for dinner. He's going to acquire you and spit out the bones. I swallowed hard. I tried to touch the tiger, but my hand was shaking too much. He's going to acquire you and spit your... I think he's looking... I said. It might just get his attention. I think he's noticed us, Marco said. Let me tell you something. 700 pounds of deadly... A male Siberian tiger, to be exact. 10 feet long. 700... Chapter 20. A male Siberian tiger, to be exact. 10 feet long. 700 pounds of deadly speed and unbelievable power. You know those... Chapter 19. We left straight from the mall, hopping a bus out to the gardens, which is clear across the city. On the way, I tried to catch up on my homework. I had missed a lot of classes that day, so I borrowed class notes from my friends. Rachel kept perfect notes. Tobias had terrible notes with all kinds of little drawings in the margin. It took a while before I could figure out what they were. They were buildings and people and cars, the way they looked from high up in the sky. I don't really need to go in, Tobias said as we pooled our limited cash to buy tickets. I'm happy with just my Hawkmoor. I don't want to be anything else. I think that's a mistake, Rachel said. Our one real weapon is the power to morph. We should acquire as many useful morphs as we can. What kind of animal morphs are going to be able to deal with Mr. 3 when he turns into that big monster that ate the Andalite? I asked. There was nothing in this zoo or any other that was going to kick that big monster's butt. Marco winked. Fleas? No one can kill fleas. We'll itch him to death. I had to smile. So now you're suddenly Mr. Hopeful? No, I'm just so scared I'm getting weird, he said. I haven't done this morphing stuff. You guys all have. I'm not even a full-fledged Animorph yet. I'm still normal. I still feel normal, Cassie said. She looked troubled. Cassie, you can turn into a horse, Marco said. Very few normal kids can do that. It's different for Jake, turning into a lizard. He's always been a reptile. I took a good-natured swing at Marco, but he dodged it. It was cool having Marco with us, even if he was giddy. It took about a half an hour to reach the main gate of the gardens. I climbed down off the bus feeling nervous. Not at all like I usually felt going there. I mean, the gardens is just about my favorite place to go normally, but normally I'm not going there to get personal with dangerous animals. The main part of the gardens is rides. They have all the usual stuff, like roller coasters, which are my personal favorite, and Ferris wheels, and water slides. But they also have an animal part, which is like a zoo, only cooler. They do dolphin shows, and there's this whole section where you can get close to some of the safer animals. And this monkey habitat they have is like a whole monkey city, practically. Anyway, if I were an animal, and I had to be in a zoo, I'd want to be there. Cassie led us to the main building, which holds all kinds of exhibits. It has everything but the really big animals that need lots of space. Those animals are farther out, mostly, in big grassy habitats that look like parks. Parks with walls and moats and fences around them. The main building is supposed to be like a rainforest, I guess. It's where they keep animals that need to be warm all the time. There's a pathway that winds around with tall tropical trees overhead, with bushes here and there between the exhibits. Some of the exhibits are tiny, and some are really big, like the area they have for otters. It has a waterfall and a water slide for the otters to play in. We were near the otter habitat when Cassie stopped. Okay, now everyone stay together, and try not to be too suspicious looking, she said. I'm taking you inside. Inside where? Marco asked. Well, the way it works is, there are walkways behind all these exhibits. That's how they feed the animals and give them meds or whatever. Meds or medicines. Sorry. She pointed to an inconspicuous doorway. Anyway, we can go in through there. It was an odd change from outside to inside. One minute we were in this fake rainforest. The next minute we were in what looked like a hallway at school. Only the smell was worse. Kind of damp and moldy and musty. More like the boys' locker room. Okay, look. If any staff people stop us, the story is, we're here to see my mom, Cassie said. Of course, it's so late in the afternoon she won't be here. I hope. Because if she finds out I've been dragging 4 of my friends around back here, well, I can't be saving the world from alien invaders if I'm grounded. Hopefully, there won't be many staff people here at all. We shuffled along the hallway, feeling like we definitely did not belong. Which we didn't. On either side of the main hall, there were side paths that led to different exhibits. Unfortunately, the doorways to the exhibits just had numbers on them. I knew we'd have to rely on Cassie's knowledge to find our way around. Behind some of those doors were animals you didn't want to just walk in on. "How do you guys feel about gorillas?" Cassie said. She had stopped by one of the numbered doors. "This is Big Jim's cage. He just came over from another zoo, so he's in his own private environment for now. He's very gentle." Slowly it dawned on me what Cassie was saying. "Oh, you mean, does one of us want to acquire his DNA?" "That is why we're here, Jake," Rachel pointed out. She batted her eyes at Marco. "How about you, Marco? Haven't you always wanted to be a big, hairy guy?" Marco didn't look like he was crazy about the idea, but I knew how to handle Marco. "Maybe Marco should try something easier for his first more," I said. "You know, like a cuddly little koala or something." That did it. "Koala?" Marco said, giving me a dirty look. "Open that door, Cassie." He hesitated. "You said gentle, right?" "Gorillas are extremely gentle," Cassie said. Then in a quieter voice she added, "Unless you make them mad." Cassie opened her backpack. She took out an apple and handed it to Marco. "Here, you just open the door. The way it's set up, none of the visitors will be able to see you unless you walk clear out into the cage. Besides, there's an extra security gate, so he can't just jump out and you can't just walk in. So we just open the door and hope Big Jim feels like eating." Behind the door was a second door of steel bars, with a little cutaway section for the handlers to shove the food through. The entire door opening was concealed behind a fake rock ledge, so it wasn't visible to the people looking into the cage.
But Big Jim noticed us right away. He climbed heavily down from his perch on a rock ledge and took a good look at us through the bars. Big Jim was definitely big. He had fingers the size of my wrist, but Jim didn't seem to mind us being there. Mostly he seemed interested in Marco's apple. He looked Marco over, snorted like he wasn't impressed, and then held out his hand. "Hand him the apple," Cassie directed. "He wants the apple." "I loved your work in King Kong vs. Godzilla," Marco told the ape. He stuck his hand through the bars and held out the apple. With surprising daintiness, the gorilla lifted the apple and began inspecting it closely. "Hold his hand," I said. "Yeah, right," Marco laughed. "When you acquire DNA, the animal goes into a kind of trance," I said. "Go ahead, grab his hand and concentrate." "Nice monkey." The gorilla ignored him. Big Jim was much more interested in the apple than in any of us. "Concentrate," Rachel urged. Marco closed his eyes. The ape closed his eyes. "This is so cool," Tobias commented. "You realize that gorilla could pull Marco apart like he was a paper doll? Look at those arms." Marco opened one eye. "Tobias, being terrified gets in the way of concentrating. So how about if you shut up about his arms?" Suddenly, I heard a whirring sound. I looked down the hall, then back. It was one of those electric carts, like a golf cart. It was coming toward us. "Just act natural," Cassie hissed. Marco slipped out, and she slammed the door on Big Jim. "As long as it isn't a security guy, we're probably okay." The cart came up to us. Its driver was a man wearing a stained tan lab coat over his jeans. In the back of the cart were two large white plastic buckets full of something brown and horrible smelling. "Hey, you're Cassie, right? The doc's kid? How's it going?" "Fine," Cassie said. She waved casually and the man drove right on past. "That was easy," Rachel said. "He didn't even seem to care that we're back here." "Well, where next?" Cassie wondered. We were at a four-way corner. There were blank white-painted hallways in all directions. An electric golf cart was parked there too. "What are we near?" I asked. Cassie thought for a moment. "Okay, that walkway leads to the outer exhibits. That one leads to the offices and storage facilities. These two go around the main building exhibits. We're close to, let me see, bats and snakes that way. The jaguar and the dolphin tank that way." Rachel started down the hallway to our right. "Dolphins! I love dolphins." "Wait," Cassie said, trotting after her. "What are we going to do with dolphin morphs?" "I think we should go out to the big exhibits," Marco said. "Let's get serious about this. We need firepower. Come on." "Let's stick together," I said as Marco started down the hall. I reached out to grab him before he got too far away. And that's when a voice yelled, "Hey! Hey you! What are you kids doing back here?" I saw a guy in a brown uniform. "Security!" Cassie yelped. "Oh man, they'll take us all into the office. They'll call my mom. I do not want to explain this to her." "Split up," I said. trying to sound like a leader. Just like at the construction site. One guy can't get us all. This guy looks like my grandfather, Rachel said. Not like that Hork-Bajir that was after us. You kids hold on! Oh man, Cassie said. With that, she took off down one hallway. Rachel and Tobias went after her. Marco was already 20 yards down the other hall, the one that led out to the large exhibits. I ran to catch up. The guard reached the corner. I saw him glance toward Tobias and the girls. Then he looked at me and Marco. I guess Marco and I looked more suspicious, because he chose us. Stop! You kids better stop! Let's grab the golf cart, Marco said. Steal a golf cart? If we don't take it, that guard will. Good point. We jumped in the cart. Marco slid behind the wheel. He turned the key to on. He looked at me. Just like driving bumper cars, right? Only you try not to hit anything. He put his foot down on the pedal. The electric motor made a whirring sound, and we took off. Straight toward the wall. Bam! Hey, try steering, I yelled. We backed up and took off again. We picked up speed, enough to pull away from the guard, but when I looked back, he was still jogging after us. He's going to have a heart attack, I said. Which way? What? Which way? I turned around to face forward. We had reached a T-corner. Right! I yelled. Naturally, Marco turned left. I nearly fell out. Almost immediately, we reached another corner. This time, Marco did choose right, and I did fall out of the cart. I hit the linoleum and rolled. Then I was up and racing to catch the cart. What are you doing? Marco demanded when he saw me. Quit playing around. I just gave him a dirty look and climbed back in. I think we lost the guard, Marco said. I'm fine, thanks for asking, I said. Just a few bruises, maybe a cracked skull, nothing serious. Where do you think we are? I think we are in the longest tunnel I've ever seen, I said. It was more and more like a tunnel now. The floor was still linoleum, and the walls were still whitewashed, but the lights were getting more spread out, so you definitely had the feeling you were underground. I wonder if they caught the others, Marco said. Now do you see why it's crazy to think we can beat the Yeerks? I mean, come on. We can barely beat zoo security. We haven't beat anyone yet, I said grimly. Look! Way up ahead, there were two guys in brown uniforms. Maybe they don't know who we are, Marco suggested. They might think we're regular employees. Maybe, but not if they get a good look at us, I pointed. There's a turnoff. Take it. We turned. At the same time, the guards started yelling. The side corridor grew narrow. Too narrow for the golf cart. Ditch it! I jumped out. Marco jumped after me. We could hear the guards' footsteps as they ran down the main tunnel. These guys were in better shape than the old man. These guys could run. The corridor ended abruptly. There were two doors. One a little to the left, one a little farther to the right. They were labeled P201 and P203. No help at all. Pick a door, Marco said. I took a deep breath. Door number 1. I opened P201. A blast of fresh air hit me. Sunlight blinded me. I blinked, trying to get my eyes to adjust. The rhinoceros blinked too. Ah! I yelled. Ah! Marco yelled. We jumped back and slammed the door. Wrong door, Marco said. Definitely wrong, I agreed.
Hey, you kids! Stop right there!
The guards were just at the end of the corridor. Gotta try door number 2, I said. Do it! We opened the door and ran through. There were trees all around us. Trees and grass. We were in the shade. Sunlight filtered down through the leaves. Just ahead, the bushes gave way to open grass. Where are we? Marco asked. Like I know. We worked our way through some bushes, keeping a careful eye out in all directions. We didn't see any animals, just some birds up in the trees. Hey, there are people, Marco said. He dropped down behind a bush and pointed. There were people lined up behind a railing. They were high up, or else we were low down. I parted the bush to get a better look. The people were leaning against a railing at the top of a high concrete wall. They couldn't see us because of the bushes, but they were definitely all staring at something. We're definitely in one of the habitats, I said. Those are people looking at whatever is in here with us. I'm just hoping it isn't that rhino. That thing was way too big. How do we get out of here? I don't know. Let's just get away from the door. Those guards will be coming after us any second. But you know, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, why haven't those guards come after us yet? Marco and I crawled through the bushes and around the bases of the big trees. We reached a corner of the wall, hidden from all the people above. That is an awfully high wall, Marco observed. That's got to be 30 feet high. This is not good. That wall is high for a reason. There's something in here that they don't want to escape. I scanned the wall. There was a steel ladder set into the concrete about 50 yards away. I guess that's the only way out. Let me ask you something, Marco said. Why haven't the guards come after us? I mean, if this was like the deer and antelope exhibit, they'd come right in, wouldn't they? We have to think, not panic, I said. I am trying not to think about why the guards didn't come in here. I moved back into the shadows of the bushes. Besides, maybe there's nothing in here at all. I squatted down on my haunches. My butt touched something warm. I had a terrible feeling right at that moment. I looked up and saw Marco. Normally, Marco has kind of a dark, tanned face, but his face was white, and his eyes were very large. Marco, I said, very slowly and very quietly, is there something behind me? He nodded. What is it, Marco? Jake, it's a tiger. Chapter 20. A male Siberian tiger, to be exact, 10 feet long, 700 pounds of deadly speed and unbelievable power. You know those old Tarzan movies you see on TV sometimes, where Tarzan is wrestling a tiger and actually winning? Let me tell you something. You want to know what your chances are of wrestling a tiger and coming out alive? They're about the same as your chances of jumping off the Empire State Building and surviving. I have an idea, Marco said shakily. Let's leave. Don't run, I said. It might just get his attention. I think he's noticed us, Marco said. I think he knows we're here, Jake. I think he's looking right at us. Look at his teeth. Don't freak. I have an idea. The morphing. If I acquire him, it'll put him in a trance. Acquire? Acquire what? You can't acquire anything about him. He's the acquirer, and you're the acquiree. He's going to acquire your butt for dinner. He's going to acquire you and spit out the bones. I swallowed hard. I tried to touch the tiger, but my hand was shaking too much. I took a couple of deep breaths. I heard somewhere that's supposed to calm you down. I guess it works. Unless you're practically sitting on a tiger, then absolutely nothing calms you down. Nice tiger, I whispered. He just watched me. He had this lazy who cares look. This look of total, complete, absolute confidence. Almost like he thought I was funny. Like maybe he enjoyed watching me shiver and shake. Please don't kill me, I said. Don't kill me either, Marco added. I reached my shaking hand toward the tiger. His eyes followed my hand. I touched his flank. It rose and fell with his breathing. Concentrate, Marco whispered. I was already concentrating real hard on the tiger. I was concentrating on his teeth. I was concentrating on the rippling muscles under his pale orange and black pelt. I was totally concentrating on the fact that he could swing that big, massive paw of his and send my head flying across the grass like a soccer ball. Then the tiger's breathing slowed. His eyes fluttered a little and slowly closed. How long does that trance last? Marco whispered. Well, about 10 seconds after you break contact. That's what it was with Homer. 10 seconds? 10 seconds? Yeah, so be ready to run. I'd been ready to run. I started to pull away, but then I hesitated. It was a strange moment, because right then I realized what I was doing. It hit me. This tiger was becoming a part of me. All that power and confidence was becoming part of me. He's beautiful, isn't he? I said. I expected Marco to say something sarcastic, but he said, yes, he's magnificent. Then he added, but let's get out of here before he shows us why he's king of the jungle. That's lions, I said. They're supposed to be king of the jungle, but let's not tell him that. You ready? He nodded. Now, I yelled. I jumped up and we tore for the ladder. In my head, I was counting off the seconds. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Something moved, fast, an orange and black blur. Right then I realized it. Duh! There was more than one tiger in the habitat. I heard screams coming from the spectators above. I guess they could see us now that we were out of the bushes. Marco leaped and grabbed the rungs of the ladder. He scrambled up. I was about 1/10 of a second behind him. The tiger leaped. His claws scraped the concrete just inches below me. And then he let out a roar that made the rungs of the ladder vibrate in my hands. What a noise! It echoed and reverberated and made my insides turn to liquid. Marco practically flew up the ladder and over the side of the wall. I flew right after him. It's amazing how fast you can climb a ladder when there's a tiger roaring for your blood. There they are! Someone yelled. Get them! Stop! Guards. At least 3 of them. Should we morph? Marco yelled at me. No, Just head for the crowds. There, over by the dolphin tank. It was a close call, but we made it to a big crowd just a dozen feet ahead of the guards. From that point, all we had to do was hunch down and squirm between all the people till the guards lost sight of us. We worked our way to the front gate, always crouching so our heads wouldn't show above the crowds. What did you do? Morph into a midget? It was Rachel. She was right in front of me, looking amused. Tobias and Cassie were there too. The guards were after us, I said. I had almost stopped shaking from my close encounter with the big cats. Almost. Oh, quit playing around, Jake, Rachel said. Let's get out of here. I have to be home for dinner. It turned out the other three had not been chased at all. They had lost the guards easily and had just gone on acquiring morphs, while Marco and I were risking our lives in the tiger habitat. The most annoying thing was that none of them even believed our story. Marco and I were a little resentful over that. We climbed on board the bus and practically collapsed into the seats. We could have been killed, Marco said, pouting. Really, I'm telling you, it was down to a few inches. Yeah, whatever, Rachel said. Don't obsess over it. After all, we still have tonight to deal with. Whatever danger you think you had today, it will probably be nothing next to what's going to happen tonight. Tonight, Cassie shook her head. And I haven't even thought about studying for that math test tomorrow. Rachel laughed. We may not have to worry about tomorrow. Thank you, little Miss Cheerful, Marco muttered under his breath. Chapter 21. Where have you been all afternoon and evening? My mom asked me as we sat down for dinner. My family is very old-fashioned about dinner. We all have to sit at the table. No TV. My mom's a writer, so she hates TV unless it's one of her favorite programs. Where have I been? I repeated the question. Hanging out. You know, hanging with Marco. I don't know why you bothered to ask, my dad said. His answer is always the same. Hanging out. So what did you do at work today, Dad? I asked him. Hung out, he said. He gave me a wink and we all laughed. I glanced over at Tom. He was eating chicken cacciatore like the rest of us and laughing. He seemed so normal. You doing anything tonight, Tom? I asked him. Why? I tried to look casual. You know, I was thinking maybe we could shoot some hoops, I said. Maybe you could teach me some new moves and I could take another shot at making the team. Sorry, man, he said. I have things to do tonight. Yeah, like what? I asked. Hanging out, no doubt, my mom said. Eat the broccoli, Jake. It's good for you. It's full of trace minerals and vitamins you can't get anywhere else. Okay, I said to my mom. You know how much I love trace minerals. I popped the smallest piece of broccoli I could find and tried to gag it down. I guess it wasn't any worse than eating a live spider. So, Tom, what was it you said you were doing? I asked again. He gave me a dirty look. Do I have to check in with you now? I have things to do. Is that okay, little brother? A girl, my dad commented. I know these things. I'm a doctor. No, Dad, not a girl, I wanted to say. A yerk pool. What's a yerk pool, Mom? Well, it's kind of a long story. I decided to try one more time. I guess a part of me still refused to believe what Tom was. Maybe you're just afraid to shoot hoops with me. Maybe I'd kick your butt. Yeah, that's it. Happy now? Tom sneered. His gaze met mine. Was there some sign in those eyes? Some evidence of the selfish, evil creature that was controlling him? No, I wish there had been. But there is no way to know who is a controller and who isn't. No way. It's what makes them so hard to stop. They can be anyone, anywhere. Even a person you think you know, a person you admire, look up to, love. I broke my gaze away from Tom's and looked down at my food. A few minutes later, Tom got up to go. I knew where he was going. After he left, I went to the upstairs phone, where my parents couldn't overhear me. I called Marco. He's on his way, I said. I called Tobias and Rachel. I tried to call Cassie, but I got her mother instead. She's not in, her mom said. She sounded worried. She wasn't home for dinner. She went out to feed some of the animals and didn't come back. My stomach clenched. She's probably just out riding one of the horses, I said, trying to reassure myself as much as Cassie's mom. You know, Cassie, all the horses are in their stalls, she said. I took a couple of deep breaths. Something was wrong. What had happened to Cassie? I'll look around for her, I said. Don't worry, I'll bet she just saw some injured animal or something and went off to rescue it. You know Cassie, I said again. Yes, I'm sure she's fine. Right. She was about as sure as I was. But what could I do? The plan was set to attack the Yerk pool and rescue Tom. Maybe Cassie was already at the school waiting. Maybe. I had a very bad feeling as I rode my bike to the school. I hid the bike across the street, the way we had planned. Then I hooked up with Marco and Rachel. Cassie's missing, I said. And where's Tobias? Rachel pointed up at the sky. The sun was setting fast, but I could see Tobias circling high overhead. What is the matter with him? I exploded. He's got a 2-hour time limit, and we don't know how long this is going to take. Maybe we should bail until we find out what happened to Cassie, Rachel said. Could be she's just scared, Marco said. I am. Maybe, I agreed, although I doubted it. But they say you never know who's going to be brave or cowardly in a battle. I just hoped I wasn't a coward. The truth was, my mouth was already dry and my heart was already pounding. And we hadn't even done anything yet. Tobias swooped down and perched on Rachel's shoulder. It surprised me a little. Why would Tobias perch on Rachel's shoulder? And she didn't seem at all annoyed. She rubbed her head against him a little. Are we doing this or not? Tobias asked. This was not starting off right at all. The bad feeling in my stomach was just getting worse. Cassie missing, Tobias already morphed. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for me to decide. Yeah, we're doing it, I said. The school was locked up for the night, but Marco had taken care of that little problem. He knew of a window in the science lab that didn't lock. We crawled into the science lab through the window. It was dark, except for the dying light of the sun that glinted off the glass beakers and test tubes. Tobias drifted through and landed neatly on the teacher's desk. Let me take a look, I said. I opened the door as slowly as I could and peeked out through the crack. I could see down the nearly dark hallway to the janitor's closet. Instantly, I pulled back in. There are people out there, I said. 3 people heading into the closet. Controllers, Rachel said. I guess it's dinner time for Yerks. None of us thought that was very funny. How are we going to get in there? Marco asked. Wait a minute, Rachel said. Do all the controllers know each other by sight? I mean, maybe we're controllers, right? So we just walk right on in like we belong there? Marco asked. Wonderful plan, Rachel. I have a better idea. Let's just kill ourselves now and get it over with. Maybe Rachel's right, I said. Big maybe, Marco pointed out. Big, huge maybe. How about Tom? He would know whether you were a controller. I cracked the door again and looked out. I think Tom's already down there, I said. Besides, the hallway's empty now. I guess they all... I fell silent. Wait, here comes someone. I stared. It wasn't easy to see faces in the gloom. I could tell there were 2 people. One was wearing a uniform. It was the controller policeman, and he was rudely yanking someone along with him. I could see that it was a girl. I didn't really want to see any more. Tobias, I said, I need you to use your hawk eyes. Tobias fluttered over and stood on my shoulder. He peeked his fierce head out into the hall, and then drew back. Yes, he said. It's her. I felt like the floor had opened underneath me. Marco grabbed me because I looked like I was about to fall over. They have her, I whispered. The controllers. They have Cassie. Chapter 22. Who has Cassie? How? Rachel stammered. That policeman. The controller. The one who came out to Cassie's farm. The one who was at the sharing meeting. He has her. He saw her at the meeting trying to get close to the full members. Rachel let go a few choice words. We hadn't even started, and already everything was a disaster. Okay, I said grimly. We go ahead. Like Rachel said, we figure there are too many controllers for all of them to know each other. I mean, they add new bodies all the time, right? So maybe we're new controllers, right? Oh, man, Marco moaned. You have a better idea? I snapped. No, he said. I think we go ahead. We take our chances. Let's rock and roll. Okay then, everyone act cool. I looked at Tobias. Too late for you to morph back now, but try not to let them see you. Rachel, Marco, and I stepped out into the dark hallway. My legs were stiff. My knees were rickety. I was walking like Frankenstein trying to look casual. We headed for the janitor's closet. Fortunately, no one else was in the hallway. We entered the tiny room and stepped inside. I tried to recall the sequence for opening the door. faucet to the left, then twist the second hook around right. The door swung open. There was more noise than there had been the other day. Or maybe it was just that my human ears heard it better than my lizard ears had. There was a deep sloshing, swishing sound, almost like gentle surf breaking on the shore. But that was the nice sound. The other sounds were horrifying. Despairing cries, terrified screams, shouts, shrieking triumphant laughter. "You sure this is just the Yerk pool?" Marco said in a nervous, shaky voice. "I see a guy with horns and a pitchfork, and I am out of here." I stepped into the opening. The stairs were steep, and there was no rail, so you felt like you were about to pitch forward with every step. We descended together. The door closed automatically behind us. At first, I guess I expected there to be maybe a couple dozen steps, but the steps never ended. We just kept walking, and there were always more steps. The walls were dirt, then quickly became rock as we went down, down, down. It felt like those stairs would never end. "Some superior aliens," Marco whispered. "You'd think they could have put in an elevator." We all giggled a little. Very little. Suddenly, the rock walls widened out. We had emerged into a huge cavern. And when I say huge, I mean huge. They could have played the Super Bowl in there and had room left over for a couple of malls. It was like a giant bowl turned upside down, all carved out of solid rock. At the very top of the bowl was the faint outline of a hole. I thought I could see stars through it. All around the outer edges of the cavern, I could see other stairways, like ours. They seemed to come from every direction, appearing out of the rock walls and leading down to the floor of the cavern. We clustered closer to the center of the stairway. It was a sheer drop off the side of the stairs. "This is gigantic," Marco said. "This isn't just under the school. This is under half the town. Those stairways must lead up to a dozen secret entrances." He shook his head. "Jake, they have this entire area set up with secret passageways. Oh man, this is worse. This is so much worse. So much bigger." I felt the same despair. We were fools. This wasn't some little group of alien bad guys we were dealing with. To build this underground city, these guys had power we couldn't even imagine. That's almost what it was. A city. There were buildings and sheds all around the rim of the cavern, and we could see yellow caterpillar earth movers and cranes at work on the far side of the cavern. They seemed weirdly normal in this incredible place. And there were creatures everywhere. Taxons, Hork-Bajir, and other things I couldn't even begin to guess at. But mostly there were humans. A lot of them. At the very center of the cavern was a pool, like a small lake, maybe 100 feet across, and perfectly round. Only the water wasn't exactly water. It moved more like melted lead, and was about the same color. The sloshing sound we could hear was the liquid of the pool being rippled and splashed by hundreds of fast-moving things below the surface. I knew what they were. Yerks. Yerks in their natural slug-like state. They were swimming and cavorting in the pool like kids on a hot day. Near the edge of the pool were cages. In the cages were Hork-Bajir and human beings. Some of the humans screamed for help. Some cried silently. Some just sat and waited, all hope lost. There were adults there, and kids, women and men. More than 100, packed 10 to a cage. The captive Hork-Bajir were kept in separate, stronger cages. They paced and howled and slashed at the air with their bladed arms. I almost lost hope. I felt like my heart had stopped. This was a place of unimaginable horror, and we were so few and so weak. Below us, on the stairs, I could see the controller cop and Cassie. He was dragging her roughly whenever she stumbled. They had reached the bottom of the stairs. "I'm going to morph," I said. "I'm going to get Cassie away from him." Marco put his hand on my shoulder. "Not time yet, dude. Be cool."
"Cassie's okay, Jake,"
Tobias said.
"She isn't hurt, just scared."
"He'd better not hurt her," I said. "Keep an eye on them, Tobias." There were 2 low steel piers built out over the pool. On one, Hork-Bajir controllers politely guarded a line of humans and Hork-Bajir and Taxons. This was the unloading station. One by one, the people knelt down, bent over, and dipped their heads toward the slimy surface of the pool. The Hork-Bajir helped them. As we watched, a woman calmly bent over, her head just inches above the lead-gray pool. A Hork-Bajir held her elbow gently to help her keep her balance. Then we saw the thing dribbling, sliding, squirming, crawling out of her ear. A Yerk. "Oh no," Rachel moaned. She sounded like she might be sick. "Oh no, no." When the yerk was all the way out of the poor woman's head, it dropped into the pool and disappeared beneath the turbulent surface. Instantly, the woman cried out. "You filth! Let me go! Let me go! I am a free woman. You can't keep doing this. I am not a slave. Let me go! 2 Hork-Bajir grabbed her. They dragged the woman to the nearest cage and threw her in. Help! The woman said. Oh, please, someone help! Help us all! Chapter 23. Help! Please, someone help us! We had been hearing cries like that all the way down those steps, but now we were close enough to give the cries a human face. It cut straight to my soul. There was a second steel pier. That was the loading station. There, the host bodies were dragged from their holding cages to have the Yeerks re-enter their heads. It was a pretty basic process. They grabbed the hosts, whether human or Hork-Bajir, and forced their heads down into the pool. The people sometimes fought and screamed, and sometimes just cried. But they always lost. When their heads were yanked back up out of the pool, we could see the slugs still slithering into their ears. After a few minutes, they would become calm again as the Yeerks regained control. Then off they went, once more slaves of the Yeerks. It was a horrible assembly line, from the unloading pier to the holding cages to the infestation pier. They moved the poor victims through at a pretty speedy rate, but there was another area we could only now see. There, humans and Hork-Bajir waited on comfortable chairs, sipping drinks, and actually watching TV. Taxons squirmed around like gigantic spiny maggots. I heard the faint sound of a television set. I was sure I could hear laughter from the humans. They were watching the show and having a good laugh.
Those are the voluntary hosts,
Tobias said.
Collaborators.
What are you talking about? I demanded.
You remember what the Endolite told us. Many humans in Hork-Bajir are voluntary hosts,
Tobias replied.
The Yeerks persuade them to let them take over.
I can't believe that, Rachel said. No person would ever let this happen to them. No one would ever give up control of himself. Some people are scum, Rachel, Marco said. Sorry to burst your balloon.
The Yeerks convinced them that taking on a Yeerk will solve all their problems. I think that's what the sharing is all about. People believe that by becoming something different, they can leave behind all their pain.
Like spending all their time as a hawk, Marco pointed out. Tobias had nothing to say to that. He spread his wings and flew up and away. Tobias, come back, I called to him. We have to get moving, Rachel said. We've been standing here staring for too long. She looked at Marco. Don't be a jerk to Tobias, okay? We need everyone. Tobias came swooping back toward us.
Cassie,
he said.
She's on the pier. The infestation pier. They're going to turn her into a host.
With my normal human eyes, I couldn't see that well in the purple gloom. I could just make out the cop's uniform and the small shape beside him. Do you see Tom? I asked Tobias. In answer, he flapped his powerful wings and gained altitude. I saw him high over the pool. Then he came back toward us in a power dive.
I see him,
he said. I hesitated before asking. I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Is he in the cages? Or is he voluntary?
He's in a cage,
Tobias said.
He's yelling his brains out at the Hork-Bajir guards.
Yes! I knew Tom would never have gone voluntarily. I knew they must have taken him kicking and punching.
Cassie is getting near the end of the pier,
Tobias warned.
We only have a few minutes before they infest her.
It was time. We were at the bottom of the steps. We ran over to hide behind a storage shed of some kind. Marco pulled me around the corner, drawing me close so that I could hear him whisper. Look, before we do this, there's one thing, Jake. You have to promise me. I knew what he was going to say. If I have to die, okay. But don't let them take me. Don't let them put one of those things in my head. It'll be okay. You! A voice yelled. A human voice. You two! Who are you? I spun around. A man. Just one man. But beside him, flanking him, was a Hork-Bajir, looking suspicious. And on the other side, a Taxon. Somehow the man hadn't seen Rachel. She was just around the corner of the building. But he had seen Marco and me talking. I guess it hadn't looked quite right to him. Us? Marco asked. Who are we? Hey, who are you? Take them, the man ordered. The Hork-Bajir advanced on us. The Taxon slithered forward on its dozens of sharp, spiny legs, red jelly eyes quivering, mouth opening and closing in anticipation. I knew I had to morph, but I was frozen with fear. Then I saw Rachel. She had gotten around behind the controllers, and she was getting very, very large. Chapter 24. Rachel was getting larger very fast. Huge leathery ears sprouted suddenly from the side of her head. Her nose stretched and stretched till it was longer than her body had been to start with. Her arms and legs were big as tree trunks, and from her mouth grew 2 enormous curved teeth. My cousin Rachel now stood almost 13 feet high and weighed about 14,000 pounds. The weird thing was, I was happy about all this.
Ha ha!
I heard Rachel's triumphant laugh.
I did it!
The Hork-Bajir and Taxon came closer. Rachel began twitching her little ropey tail. Her front legs pawed the dirt floor of the cavern. She raised her massive head and stuck out her 3-foot-long tusks. The Taxon was the first to notice her, with his all-around red jelly eyes, but I guess he didn't know how to react. Rachel charged. One minute she was standing there, and the next minute she was barreling forward like an out-of-control 18-wheeler. The Hork-Bajir was fast. He spun around and slashed at her trunk with his elbow blade. Too little, too late. Rachel was moving, and no little flesh wound was going to stop her.
Puny little nothing!
Rachel cried, outraged.
You attack me?
The Hork-Bajir went down, crushed under her monstrous feet. He bellowed, but Rachel's trumpeting was louder. The Taxon tried to run. It turns out Taxons can move out when they want to. It also turns out elephants are faster than you think. They can be very fast. Rachel's foot caught the Taxon's back end. The needle legs collapsed, cracking like broken twigs. Yellow goo oozed from the popped flesh of the big worm. She just kept rolling over him, leaving behind a big, extremely disgusting pile of goo. The foul smell of the squashed Taxon nearly knocked me out. The human was still just standing there. He said, "An elephant?" Like he couldn't even think about it being real. Rachel wrapped her trunk around his middle.
Yeah,
We heard Rachel say.
an elephant.
The man screamed. I guess he figured out it was real. Rachel threw him through the air. I never saw where he landed. "Quick!" I yelled at Marco. "Morph!" "Nice work, Rachel," Marco said. "Remind me not to ever make you mad." I focused on the tiger. I knew his DNA pattern was in me. I thought of him, lying there in his habitat at the gardens, wishing he were back in the jungle, hunting and taking down his prey. I guess maybe he wouldn't mind the use I was making of his DNA. This wasn't quite a jungle, but it would have to do.
More Hork-Bajir incoming!
Rachel said. Rachel turned to face them, tusks ready. I felt the morph begin. The hair grew from my face. The tail squirted out behind me. My arms bulged and rippled. They were massive. My shirt ripped. I fell forward onto my hands, now my front legs. The power! It was electric. It was like a slow-motion explosion. I could feel the power of the tiger growing inside me. I watched claws, long, wickedly curved, tearing, ripping, shredding claws, grow from my puny human hands. I could feel the teeth sprouting in my mouth. My eyes looked through the darkness like it was broad daylight. But most of all, the power. The sheer, incredible power. I was afraid of nothing. Hork-Bajir were running at me, their arm blades slashing at the air. I opened my mouth and I roared. The Hork-Bajir stopped dead in their tracks. That's right, my little Hork-Bajir friends, the human part of my brain thought. Time to meet the tiger. The muscles in my back legs coiled up. I bared my teeth and gave them another roar loud enough to make the ground quiver. I leaped through the air, claws outstretched. Chapter 25. I sailed through the air and struck the closest Hork-Bajir in the chest. Down he went, with me on top of him. He rolled over and tried to get up. He was fast. I was faster. He struck at me with his razored arm. I ducked under the blow. My left paw swung, so fast even I couldn't see it. It left 4 oozing tracks across the Hork-Bajir's shoulder. Another Hork-Bajir. Wrist blades, elbow blades, and talons whizzed. They were like a pair of lawnmowers on full throttle. And still, I was faster. I can't even remember what happened next. All I have is this image of the tiger, of me, with claws slashing and jaws snapping. I was a whirlwind of orange fur and black stripes. The Hork-Bajir fell back. I roared. They turned and ran. On one side, I saw Rachel. She lifted a Hork-Bajir up on her tusks and tossed him back over her shoulder like he was a doll. And then I saw Marco. Big Jim's massive body was ripping its way out of Marco's slight frame.
Just call me King,
Marco said.
King Kong.
The truth is, like Cassie said, gorillas are very gentle, peaceful, quiet creatures. The truth also is that they are strong. Really strong. Basically, compared to a gorilla, a man is something made out of toothpicks. Now, Hork-Bajir are pretty large creatures. They stand about 7 feet high and are built for trouble. But Marco swung one big gorilla fist and hit the nearest Hork-Bajir in the stomach. The Hork-Bajir went down. Hard. I roared. Rachel trumpeted. Marco lifted the Hork-Bajir up and tossed him aside like a rag doll. The rest of the Hork-Bajir turned and ran.
Now!
I shouted.
Before they get organized again.
We charged. Rachel just plowed right through some of the small sheds and buildings like Godzilla heading for Tokyo. Marco came loping along, swinging his massive forearms, punching anything that got in his way. Whatever he punched stayed down. And I ran right down the middle, looking for any controller dumb enough to mess with me. We reached the cages. The people in Hork-Bajir inside shrank back from us. They were almost as afraid of us as they were of the controllers. Let's face it, a rescue party made up of an elephant, a gorilla, and a tiger is not what they'd been hoping for. Marco began ripping at a lock on one of the cages. The lock gave way. The door flew open. Marco did something very human to reassure them. He made a little bow, then crooked his finger at them as if to say, "Come on out." Tom was the first out. He looked scared and mad and determined. I was going to send him a thought message, telling him who I was, but suddenly, there was Rachel, screaming in my head.
Jake!
Rachel said.
Look, Cassie!
Cassie was nearly at the end of the infestation pier. The Hork-Bajir and Taxon guards were still sticking to their duties. As I watched, another human was shoved headfirst into the Yerk pool.
Cassie is next!
I cried.
Don't worry,
Marco said.
We'll take care of Tom. Go! Go before they do it to her!
I hesitated for only a second, as 1,000 thoughts went through my head. Later I would think about that moment. Think maybe, if only. I broke into a run. I had to get to her. As I watched, the 2 Hork-Bajir on the pier grabbed Cassie by the arms. "No!" she cried. I tore at full speed. I leaped over Taxons. I dodged around Hork-Bajir. I practically flew. But I couldn't really fly. Not the way Tobias could. I saw him high up in the cavern. Down he came, like a bullet. The talons came forward. Tobias hit the first Hork-Bajir at about 50 miles an hour. He swooped away, leaving the alien clutching at the slimy mess where his eyes used to be. That was all Cassie needed. She broke away and ran back down the pier. I finally got there and went after the remaining Hork-Bajir controller.
Morph!
I yelled to Cassie.
Morph and head back for the stairs!
She looked at the other humans and Hork-Bajir behind her in the line.
Run! All of you, run!
They did. Cassie plowed into the panicky crowd. Moments later, a black-maned head appeared above the shoulders of the crowd. Cassie had become a horse and was racing for the stairs. I started after her, racing back around the pool toward Marco, Rachel, Tom, and the crowd of hosts they'd freed from the cages. The controllers were starting to get organized. A group of Taxons were slithering out to stop Cassie and me. Both the Hork-Bajir and the Taxons were carrying weapons now.
Up and over!
I said to Cassie as we neared the line of Taxons.
Up and over!
She yelled back. I leaped. Cassie jumped. Side by side, we sailed over the startled Taxons. They fired their handheld Draken beams, but too late. The beams sizzled the air behind us, and we blew past. I could see Rachel's towering gray bulk just ahead. The stairs were near. I saw Marco with Tom. We were going to make it. And then he stepped out daintily from a group of Hork-Bajir. He seemed almost harmless in his Andalite body. A gentle half-deer, half-human-looking creature, with bluish fur and an extra set of eyes on comical stalks. Visser 3 didn't look all that scary, not compared to the Hork-Bajir, the Taxons, or even our own Earth animals. But Visser 3 had an Andalite body. He had an Andalite's power to morph, and he had been all over the universe, acquiring the genetic patterns of monsters like nothing ever seen on Earth. A Taxon slithered up beside Visser 3 and spoke. It was a weird, half-whistling sound.
Sweet, sweet, sweet,
Visser 3 said nothing. He just looked at me with the vertical slits that were his eyes.
This Texan fool says you are wild animals,
Visser 3 said.
He wants to know if he and his brothers can eat you.
He laughed silently.
But I know you are not animals. I know who and what you are. So, not all of you Andalites died when I burned your ship.
It took me a couple of seconds to realize what he meant. Then it hit me. Of course! He thought we were Andalites. He'd guessed that we were morphs, not real animals. And he knew that the Andalites were the only species with morphing technology.
I compliment you on getting this far, but it will accomplish nothing. Because now, my brave Andalite warriors, it is time. Time to die.
He began to morph.
I acquired this body on the 4th moon of the 2nd planet of a dying star. Like it?
I realized I'd been wrong to be hopeful. We were not going to make it. Chapter 26. From Visser 3's Andalite body, the creature grew, tall as a tree, towering over even Rachel. 8 massive legs, 8 long, spindly arms, each ending in a 3-fingered claw. And from the place where the top set of arms grew, came the heads. Heads. Plural. 8 of them. This creature had a thing for the number 8. Even the Hork-Bishop controllers backed away. Even they didn't want to be near Visser 3 when he morphed this way. But the Taxons edged in closer, crowding around their leader like a pack of hungry dogs looking for table scraps. I was frozen in terror, stunned. Even the tiger that was a part of me was confused and worried. I had started to think that with our morphed bodies we could take on anything. But we couldn't take on this monster. Not and survive.
Run!
I yelled to the others.
Up the stairs!
Cassie nudged 2 of the humans from the cages and tossed back her head. They figured out what she wanted and climbed on her back. Then she galloped toward the stairs.
Yes, run,
Visser 3 crowed.
It makes a more challenging target.
Then Visser 3 struck. From one of the heads, a round spinning ball of flame erupted. A ball of flame that flew like a missile. It skimmed through the air and splattered against the back of one of the women riding Cassie. She fell off, screaming and rolling around to put out the flames. Cassie kept going with only one rider. She reached the base of the stairs.
Target practice,
Visser 3 laughed. He fired fireball after fireball, one head after another. One singed my shoulder and flew past. One hit Rachel in the ear and made her scream in my head and trumpet in terror. The air was full of fire.
We have to get out of here,
Marco yelled.
Yes, run! Run for the stairs!
I repeated.
Rachel, get moving! Clear a path!
A big swarm of us was heading for the stairs, but the Taxons had closed in around us. Anyone that got away from Visser 3 was swarmed over by the Taxons. I saw Tom out of the corner of my eye. He was swinging his fist at a pair of Taxons that were circling around him. Tom couldn't hurt them, but he was trying just the same. Rachel ran over and plowed into one of them, crushing him beneath her tree trunk legs. Marco threw his arms around the second Taxon and twisted till it split open, spilling its putrid guts all over the floor. Rachel had hit the bottom few stairs and stopped. Elephant bodies are great for some things, but they are useless for climbing stairs.
Morph back!
I told Rachel. She began to shrink almost immediately, but there wasn't time to wait until the morphing was complete. Rachel started up the stairs as a shifting mass of gray and pink, part human, part elephant, staggering on weird, half-finished legs and dragging a shriveled trunk that made her pretty face into something awful to see. We ran, but it was impossible. By the time we had climbed a few dozen stairs, there were only a few free humans and 2 free Hork-Bajir with us. The rest had all been recaptured or burned. A fireball exploded at my feet and I snarled, but still we retreated. We were 100 feet up the stairs when the last 2 free Hork-Bajir were brought down by the Visser's fireballs. They fell in flames. The Visser was climbing the stairs now, all alone. He was so big he barely fit on the stairs. I knew when we reached the point where the walls closed in around the stairs that we would be safe from Visser 3. Glancing up, I saw that Cassie was almost to safety above us with 1 human rider. The rest of us, along with Tom and a pitiful handful of freed humans, were bunched together. Visser 3 began pelting the staircase ahead of us with fire. We were trapped. Fire ahead, Visser 3 himself behind. "No," I heard a familiar voice say. "No, you filthy creep. You aren't going to win this time." It was Tom. All alone, he charged at Visser 3, armed with nothing but his fists. One of the Visser's arms came down and swung at him.
Tom!
I cried. My tiger body roared with all its might, but the sound was lost in the noise of crying humans and whistling Taxons. I saw Tom stagger from the Visser's blow. I saw him fall from the edge of the stairs. I went a little crazy. I was on the Visser before I knew what was happening. On him, digging my claws into his flesh, I twisted up and behind one of his 8 heads. The tiger in me knew what to do. I sank my teeth into his neck and clamped my powerful jaws and held on. Another head turned back and aimed a fireball at me. I dodged the first fireball. The second burned my flank. I jumped clear. The Visser roared in pain. I roared in hatred. And we ran up those stairs with 100 nightmares on our heels. Chapter 27. We ran. Exhausted and burned and terrified, we ran. Visser 3 had made one mistake. He was too large in his morph to follow us much farther up the stairs. I heard Visser 3 yell something as we finally got away. He said,
"I'll kill you all, Andalites. Run away. It doesn't matter. I'll kill you all."
Actually, I think it did matter. We hadn't exactly destroyed Visser 3, but we had come out of it alive. We Animorphs. The final count was exactly 1 human freed. The woman who rode Cassie's back up out of that hellish pit. And Cassie had gotten away clean. It had been the suspicious controller policeman who had grabbed her. He was the only controller to know her name, where she lived, and that she had been spying on the sharing. Cassie said we didn't have to worry about him anymore. She didn't want to talk about what had happened to him. As for Tom, my brother, Tom was not freed. I was lying in my own bed, shaking and shivering and crying from the after effects of terror, when I heard him come home later that night. He never knew that I was the tiger. He never knew how close I had come to freeing him. He was a controller again. The yerk was in his head once more. Cassie and Marco and Rachel and I had all made it up those stairs. We had emerged into the hallway of a school that would never seem the same to us again. And Tobias? He survived too. It was almost morning when I was awakened from dead sleep by feathery beating on my window. I opened it, and Tobias flew in. "You made it," I said. "Oh man, you had me scared. I figured you were still trapped down there. I mean, I thought you could probably find somewhere to hide in that cavern, but I knew you'd been morphed for a long time. I was worried you wouldn't be able to morph back without getting caught. It's good to see you."
Good to see you too, Jake,
he said.
"How are the others?"
"Alive," I said. "Alive. I guess that's all that counts."
"Yes, that is all that matters."
"Come on, Tobias," I said. "Morph back. You can stay here. I'll even let you have the bed. I could sleep on nails, I'm so tired." He didn't say anything. And I guess in my heart, I'd known it all along. I just didn't want to admit it. "Come on, Tobias," I said. "Morph back."
"Jake."
"Just come on. Back to human now, dude. No more flying tonight."
"I hid in the cavern for a while,"
he said.
"They didn't see me, but I had to stay out of sight till I could get out. Jake, it took too long. Too long. More than 2 hours."
I just stared at him. At his laser-focused eyes. At his wicked beak and sharp talons. And at his wings. At the broad, powerful wings that let him fly.
"I guess this is me from now on,"
Tobias said. I knew there were tears falling down my cheeks, but I didn't care anymore.
"It's okay, Jake. Like you said, we're alive."
I went to the window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, around one of those cold, twinkling stars, was the Andalite homeworld. Somewhere up there was hope.
"They'll come,"
Tobias said.
"The Andalites will come. And until then..."
I nodded and wiped away my tears. "Yeah," I said. "Until then, we fight." Thank you for listening to this R3 Shorts audiobook of Animorphs, Book 1, The Invasion, by K.A. Applegate. We hope you will click the like button and subscribe to our channel.
R3 Shorts presents Animorphs, Book 2, The Visitor, written by K.A. Applegate. Read for you by Rob Rice. If you like this audiobook, please like and subscribe to our channel for more great content.
Chapter 1.
My name is Rachel. I won't tell you my last name. None of us will ever tell you our last names. Whenever I do use a last name, it's a fake. Sorry, but that's the way it has to be. And we won't tell you the name of our town, or our school, or even what state we are in. If I told you my last name, the Yeerks would be able to find my friends and me, and if they ever find us, it will be the end. They might kill us. Or worse. Yes, there really is something worse than death. I've seen it. I've heard the cries of despair from those doomed to be slaves of the Yeerks. I've watched as the evil gray slugs writhe and squeeze in through the ear and take over what was a free human being. There are 5 of us. Just 5. Jake, Cassie, Marco, Tobias, and me. Marco came up with a name for us, for what we are now. He called us Animorphs. I guess that's as good a name as any for what we are. Mostly, I still just feel like a normal kid, you know?
But I guess normal kids don't turn into elephants or bald eagles. And normal kids don't spend their free time fighting to save the world from the nightmares called Yeerks.
That day, the sun was bright. It warmed the earth below us. Warm air rose in an invisible bubble, a thermal. The thermal pushed up beneath our wings, and we circled higher and higher and higher, till it almost seemed we could touch space. Somewhere up there in cold space, up in orbit, was the Yeerk mothership, perhaps right over our heads. The Yeerks were parasites. In their natural state, they were just big slugs who lived in a sludgy pond called a Yeerk pool, but the Yeerks have the power to take over other bodies. They have enslaved many races throughout the galaxy, the Taxons, the Hork-Bajir, and others. And now they had come to Earth, looking for more bodies to control. Who was there to try and stop them? Well, off in space there were the Andalites, but the Andalites were far away, and it would take them a long time to come to rescue the people of Earth. On Earth, no one knew of the Yeerks. No one but 5 kids who were having fun being birds and riding the thermals. I looked over at my friends. Some were a little way below, some were higher up. Jake was flapping his wings a little more than the rest of us. He had adopted a falcon morph. Falcons don't soar quite as well as hawks or eagles. Tobias was the smoothest flyer. That was partly because red-tailed hawks are natural acrobats. Partly, it was because Tobias had much more practice flying than the rest of us. Too much practice.
Okay, Tobias, you were right. This is the coolest thing in the world,
I said.
Want to try a dive? It's amazing,
he said. I wasn't exactly sure that I wanted to dive, but what could I say? I don't usually turn down a challenge, so I said,
Sure.
Follow me.
Tobias bent his wings back and plummeted toward the ground like a bullet. I tucked my wings back and went after him. The ground came rushing up at me. I was falling with nothing at all to stop me from splatting right into the ground. It was like a nightmare. We were going like 60 miles an hour, as fast as a speeding car. 60 miles an hour, aiming right for the ground. But even though it was scary, it was also way cool. Forget surfing, forget skateboarding, forget snowboarding. You haven't had a thrill till you've ridden the thermals a mile into the air and then gone hurtling straight down at maximum speed. Air streamed past, just like when you open the car window and you're going really fast. It was like being in the middle of a hurricane. The leading edge of my wings was battered and vibrating. I felt my tail make dozens of tiny adjustments, moving a single feather one way or the other to keep me pointed straight, but one wrong move, and I could have tumbled end over end. At this speed, if I suddenly tumbled, I feared I could break a wing. A broken wing this high up was a death sentence.
Tobias, I just realized something.
What?
This isn't like being an elephant. If I got in trouble as an elephant, I could morph back to my human body. But I'm a long way up. If I morph back to my human body...
I didn't finish the sentence, but I suddenly had this vision of me, the real me, Rachel, dropping like a stone toward the hard ground below.
I guess Tobias could sense the fear that was building in me.
Let the eagle do the flying,
Tobias advised.
Relax, and let the eagle's mind do the thinking. She knows what she's doing.
I'm glad one of us does,
I said nervously. It's strange when you're in a morph. You have the animal's brain in with your own. Usually, you can control that animal intelligence, but not always. And sometimes you have to learn to let go, to let the animal take charge. I relaxed. Instantly, the vibration lessened. I felt more stable. The eagle was in charge, and Tobias was right. The eagle knew how to fly. Then, to my amazement, I saw something go zipping right past us, faster than either me or Tobias. It was Jake. His peregrine falcon's smaller wings made it harder for him to float on the thermals, but those same wings made him unbelievably fast in diving. It was almost like Tobias and I were standing still.
Yeah!
Jake yelled in our heads. I would have smiled if I'd had a mouth. Jake is like me. He loves excitement and adventure and being a little crazy. Maybe we're so alike because we're cousins. Also, we're both a little competitive, I guess. It bothered me that he was a faster diver than I was, just like it bothered him that I could soar better. I guess that sounds ridiculous, huh? Something went right by my head.
You hear that?
Tobias asked.
Yeah, I sure did,
I said.
What was that?
I don't know.
Instinctively, I pulled up out of the dive, straining every muscle in my wings as I opened them, and felt the shock of wind resistance. It was like opening a parachute. The rest followed my lead. We were still a few thousand feet up, but much closer to the ground than we had been. I felt something go right through my tail feathers.
Hey, someone down there is shooting at us,
I said.
I can see them,
Cassie said. She and Marco had joined up with us. They had both morphed the same osprey. It was hard to tell them apart because you can't really tell where thought speech comes from.
2 guys, over in the woods. They have a rifle. I can't believe this.
I was really mad.
I'm an endangered species. I'm a bald eagle. What's the matter with those creeps?
He's getting ready to shoot again,
Marco reported.
I can see him taking aim. As soon as you see the flash of the rifle, dodge hard right,
I yelled. A normal eagle or hawk or falcon would not have been able to figure that out, but we weren't just raptors. We still had our human intelligence. There are times to let the animal take over. There are other times when that superior human intelligence comes in handy.
There, they fired,
Jake yelled. Instantly, I turned a sharp right. The bullet went whizzing by harmlessly.
You know what? I don't think I like those guys,
Tobias said. Tobias has special reasons for disliking anyone who would shoot at a bird.
Me neither,
I agreed.
I have an idea.
I explained what I wanted to do, and the 5 of us flew off, out of range of the shooters. When we were far enough away, we went into a steep dive, down, down, faster and faster toward the trees. I thought I was scared diving from high up. Now I was diving at lower altitude, aiming directly at the trees. This was a whole new level of terror. With my eagle's eyes, I could see the bark on the trees. I could see ants on the bark of the trees. It was like those trees were right in front of us. I hoped the eagle knew when to pull out of the dive. If I slammed into one of those trees at 60 miles an hour, I was spam. Then, at just the right split second, like a perfectly trained squadron of fighter jets, we opened our wings and swooshed into the trees. Unbelievable. I heard Marco yell.
I don't know if that was fun or just insane.
It was like some video game nightmare. We kept most of the speed from the dive, and now we were zooming through the trees so fast that tree trunks were just a brown blur all around us. Tree, bank left. Tree, bank right. Tree! Dozens of feathers made the slightest individual adjustments. Muscles in my wings trimmed the angle of attack, a millimeter one way, a millimeter back. Tree! Tree! Tree, 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 tree!
Yeah!
I yelled, half from terror and half from the total out-of-control thrill of it. In and out, around and through, zoom, zoom! Suddenly, there they were, just ahead in a clearing. 2 teenage creeps sitting in the back of a pickup truck. One guy had a blonde ponytail. The other one wore a baseball cap. They were 100 yards away, like being all the way down a football field, but my eagle eyes were so good, I could count their eyelashes. The guy with the ponytail had the rifle. The other guy was drinking a beer. They were still scanning the skies, looking for us.
Guess what, morons? I thought as we raced at them.
We're not up there anymore. We're right here. In
your face.
Chapter 2.
They didn't even have enough time to look surprised before we struck. As a bald eagle, I was the biggest of the 5 of us. I could carry the heaviest load. I raked my talons forward. I opened them wide. Tobias's hawk let loose an intimidating shriek. My talons hit the gun barrel and closed on it. Tobias slashed the ponytail guy's head with his own talons. Ponytail shouted in pain and surprise and loosened his grip on the rifle. "Hey!" the second guy yelled. Zoom! I was out of there with the rifle in my talons. With the additional weight of the rifle, it was a struggle getting any altitude.
"That bird has your gun, Chester, and that other one stole my beer."
I glanced over and saw Marco. At least, I think it was Marco. He had the beer can in his talons, half crumpled.
"They're way too young to be drinking,"
Marco said in his most parent-like voice. I heard the ponytail guy complaining down below.
"That ain't right. It ain't right that no bird should take my rifle like that."
I caught a little breeze and gained just enough altitude to get above the trees, but I was having a hard time. My wings were beating the still, dead air of the woods and not getting very much lift. I scraped the top of a tall pine tree and emerged from the woods. Still flapping hard to carry the weight of the rifle, I made it out toward the beach, over the low cliffs at the water's edge. The blessed thermals were there. They lifted me up and out over the water. I relaxed, letting the warm wind carry me higher. I dropped the rifle about a mile out in the ocean. I figured any jerk who would shoot at a bald eagle didn't need a gun. Marco dropped the beer with amazing precision right into a trash barrel. He looked as proud as he would have if he'd just thrown the winning basket in the NBA championship.
"It's been almost 2 hours,"
Cassie warned us as we lazily drifted back toward shore. 2 hours is the time limit. If you stay in a morph for more than 2 hours, you're trapped. Forever. There's an old, rundown church no one uses anymore, not far from the beach. It has a bell tower, although the bell is gone. We flew there. That's where we had started from. Our clothes and shoes were still piled there. 4 pairs of shoes, for the 5 of us. Cassie, still in her osprey body, peered down at her watch lying on the floor.
"Good. An hour and a half. We should try never to go over an hour and a half."
We began to morph back into our human bodies. Morphing takes concentration. When you're going from human to animal, it's harder. You really have to focus. But going back to human is easier. I focused on my human self. I formed a picture of myself in my mind. Tall, thin, with blonde shoulder-length hair. I focused especially on the hair, because I didn't like my last haircut. It was uneven at the bottom. Not that it mattered. I just wished I could do something about the hair when I morphed. Unfortunately, morphing doesn't work that way. The changes began quickly. The feathers that covered me began to melt. They ran together like hot wax. In some places, when my skin reappeared, it would have this beautiful feather pattern for a few seconds. My yellow bill sucked back into my mouth to become white teeth. That part sort of itched. It made me want to grind my teeth a few times. My lips grew out around my teeth. My eyes went from pale gold to my normal blue. My legs grew quite a bit, from about 3 inches to normal size. I looked over at Jake and saw the same things happening to him. Let me just tell you, watching someone morph is not a pretty sight. It's the kind of thing that would give you screaming nightmares if you didn't know it was going to be all right. When Cassie morphs, she always does it kind of artistically. Like when she changes into a horse, she does it so it doesn't look totally creepazoid. She has a natural talent for morphing, if there is such a thing. The rest of us just let it happen however it happens. The results can be disturbing. I happened to see Marco at the moment where his hairy boy legs came shooting out of this little bird body, and I yelped. "Yeah, gross!"
So good yourself, Rachel.
His mouth was morphing even as he spoke, so the first few words were garbled, and the last were normal. I think what he said was, "Hey, you don't look so good yourself, Rachel." He was probably right. I was glad I didn't have a mirror. My tongue grew fat in my mouth. My eyesight became faded and dim. The eagle's mind evaporated, leaving me all alone in my head. My wings became arms. My talons became toes. The scaly yellow eagle legs became my own legs, only they were still all scaly at first.
"Nice look, chicken legs," Marco said. "Do those come in extra crispy too?"
I smiled at him. You're not one to talk, Marco. I pointed down at the floor. See, his legs had changed back, but he still had huge osprey talons instead of feet. As my skin began to appear, so did my morphing outfit. Fortunately, after a few tries, we had all learned to morph some very minimal clothing, usually nothing more than skin-tight workout clothes or leotards. Not enough to go walking around in, but enough to keep us all from dying of embarrassment when we morphed in front of each other. I checked out my friends. They were mostly normal again, with just a few remaining hints that they'd been birds a minute earlier. Jake is kind of a big guy, strong-looking, with brown hair and serious dark eyes. Although at the moment his eyes were shining with excitement. Sometimes being in a morph just totally breaks you out. Jake was a lizard once, and he still hasn't gotten over the fact that he ate a live spider. But I guess he enjoyed being a falcon, because he was babbling on and on about how great it was. That was so absolute, he said. It's like now being back in a human body, I feel like I'm handicapped or something. I feel like I'm glued to the ground. And blind, Cassie agreed. Human eyes are so lame for seeing things far away. She grinned and spread her wings. She had managed to keep her wings till the very end. Now she looked like some strange angel. Oddly, the look worked for her. The osprey's 5-foot gray and white wings were incredibly cool. Do you think you could fly? Jake asked her. He looked a little awestruck. Cassie laughed. No, Jake. This body weighs about 80 pounds. These wings aren't built for that kind of weight. She morphed her wings into arms in about 3 seconds and laughed gaily. Marco shook his head. Great. When we morph, we look like some mad scientist's genetic experiment gone totally crazy. And Cassie gets to look like an angel. Cassie and I have been friends for a long time, although to look at us you wouldn't think we'd hang out together. Cassie is casual to the extreme. The girl just doesn't care about clothing or style. I swear she would wear overalls to a wedding if someone didn't stop her. Cassie lives on a farm, and her whole family is massively into animals. Her dad used the barn to run the wildlife rehabilitation clinic, which is a kind of hospital for injured animals. It's always full of birds and skunks and opossums and coyotes and every other animal you can think of. Cassie's mom is a vet, too. She works at the Gardens, this huge zoo and amusement park. So maybe Cassie was just born with an instinct for understanding animals. All I know is she's always finished morphing while the rest of us are still looking like creepy half-human, half-animal monsters. As for me, well, it's not that I miss fashion or whatever, but I do like nice clothes. I guess that, plus the way I look, makes a lot of people think I'm stuck up or something. People do think I'm pretty, but to me that's just an accident, you know? Looks are not the important thing. It's what's in your head that counts, and that's what I concentrate on. Of course, that's another area where Cassie and I are a little different. I guess she would say, no, it's what's in your heart that counts. She's a natural peacemaker. If there's ever a hassle within the group, it's usually me and Marco that caused it, and Cassie who got us all calmed down. Personally, I'm glad to be back to my regular body, Marco said. The flying part is great, but it's not a good idea to be able to see that well. Why? Jake asked. Look, Jake, how many times have you been walking around the mall or whatever, and you'll see a girl who seems good-looking from far off, but when you get closer, it turns out she's a skank? I mean, if you could see this well all the time... Excuse me? I interrupted. I'm sure I didn't hear you say what I thought you just said. I wasn't being sexist, Marco protested. It goes both ways. See, from far off, I look taller than I am. Marco is a little self-conscious about being short. He has long brown hair and a dark complexion, and most girls think he's really cute. But being small bothers him. Your problem isn't with people seeing you too well, I said. It's with people hearing you too well. You look like a fairly smart guy. Then you open your mouth. Marco just grinned. Marco lives to annoy people. He really is extremely smart, and basically nice, underneath it all. It's just that the boy loves to provoke people. Marco and Jake are best friends, even though Jake is serious and thoughtful and always trying to do what's right, while Marco is sarcastic and temperamental, and is the most reluctant of the Animorphs. Marco still thinks we should just give up the battle against the Yeerks and try to stay alive, but with Marco you never know if he really believes that, or is just saying it to be contrary. Well, let's get out of here, Jake suggested. I have homework to do. Me too, I said. And I have gymnastics class this afternoon, and I'm totally unprepared. Cassie sighed. It's such a drag. The chores and the homework all come rushing back as soon as we change back into our boring human selves. As soon as she said it, Cassie bit her tongue. She cast a regretful look to Tobias. See, while all of us had changed back, Tobias had not. Tobias was still a hawk. Tobias, who had once had unruly blonde hair and eyes that seemed hurt and tender and hopeful all at once. Tobias had been trapped while trying to escape from the hellish nightmare of the Yerk pool. He had stayed more than 2 hours in that morph. We had all returned to our human forms, but Tobias was still a hawk. Tobias will always be a hawk.
Chapter 3.
We all walked most of the way home together, feeling worn out. The flying was a little tiring, and morphing always takes a lot out of you. Tobias flew high overhead. He didn't really participate in the conversation. It's hard for him. See, he can think-speak to us, and we can understand him. But when we're in human shape, we can only talk in the normal way. He can't hear us unless he's close by, and he can't be close and still fly.
This morphing thing would be so excellent if it weren't for the whole thing with the Yerks, Marco was saying. I mean, if it were just normal, we could really use these powers.
To do what? Fight crime? Jake asked. Marco looked at him with a mixture of pity and amusement.
Fight crime? Who are you, Spider-Man? I'm talking show business. Movies, TV shows. I could go on Letterman. I could be an entire episode of Stupid Pet Tricks all by myself.
You're right, I said, batting my eyes so he would know I was kidding. You already have the stupid part down. We'd be hot in horror movies, Cassie said.
Or how about as stuntmen, Jake suggested. One of us could jump off the tallest building, and it would be totally realistic. Then we'd just morph into a bird on the way down and fly away. Now I'm really mad at the Yerks, Marco said. They're getting in the way of my showbiz career. I could be a millionaire. I could be trading funny lines with Dave. I could have beautiful Hollywood supermodels all over me.
Uh-huh, I said, with a wink at Cassie. Lots of women love animals, but sooner or later you'd have to change back into your actual self, Marco. And then boom, they'd be out of there. We walked along the boulevard that goes by the construction site. It's this huge area of half-finished buildings with rusted earth movers and cranes and backhoes scattered around. I guess it was originally going to be a shopping center, but for some reason they never finished it. We didn't take the shortcut through the construction site, like we would have in the old days, though. See, it was at this construction site that we saw the Andalite Prince's damaged fighter land. It was here that the Andalite warned us of the Yerk conspiracy and gave us our special powers. It was also here that we saw the Yerk commander, Visser III, murder the Andalite Prince. Visser III is the only one of the Yerks who has our same power to morph. Visser III is an Andalite controller, meaning he has an Andalite body. A human controller is a Yerk with a human body. A Taxon controller is a Yerk with a Taxon body. You get the idea. Visser III is the only Yerk to ever capture an Andalite body, so he's also the only Yerk who can morph. That night at the construction site, he morphed into some creature from a far-off planet, a huge, horrible monster. And then he took the Andalite and... You know what? I really don't want to talk about that. You'll have to ask Jake. We all fell silent as we passed by the site. Then I noticed that Cassie had stopped walking and was just standing there. I went back to her and realized that she was crying. Are you okay? I asked. She shook her head. No. Are you? I sighed. Flying around in the sky had been a wonderful distraction, but my head was still full of awful memories. I guess not, I admitted. Last night I had a terrible nightmare about the Yerk pool. I was back down there in that vast open cave, and I was hearing the screams and cries of the people being dragged to the pool. Cassie nodded. You know what's worse than the screams? The way they stop screaming once the Yerk is in their heads. Once they've become controllers, then you know They are slaves again. Lost. Like Tom. We both turned. It was Jake. He and Marco had seen us stop and had come back. Tom is Jake's brother. Tom is a human controller. A human being enslaved by a Yeerk in his head. We'd found the Yeerk pool and gone down into that hell to get Tom. We'd failed. We'd barely escaped with our lives. Cassie put her arm around Jake's waist. "Someday we'll save Tom," she said. Jake kinda stroked Cassie's head. I guess he got embarrassed because he instantly pulled away. Cassie didn't mind. She knows how guys are about showing their true feelings. I looked across the construction site and saw Tobias come fluttering down out of the sky. I couldn't see where he landed because that part of the site is hidden from the road, but I knew right where he was, on the spot where the Andalite had died. Somehow, in those brief moments when the Andalite had been with us, Tobias had formed some kind of special bond with him. We started walking again. "We need to find another way to get at them," I said angrily. It bothered me, imagining Tobias back in that maze of never-finished buildings, mourning for the Andalite. "Get at who?" Marco asked suspiciously. "The French, Marco," I said sarcastically. "Who do you think? The Yeerks, duh."
Whoa, 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 Marco said. "We tried that, remember? We went down into the Yeerk pool after them and got our butts kicked. Yeerks 10, humans 0.
"So you figure you should just give up?" I demanded.
"We lost one game," Jake said. "You don't quit the sport just because you lose one game."
"Some game," Marco said bitterly. "Some sport."
"We didn't lose anyway," I said. The others looked at me like I was crazy. "Look," I explained, "I know we didn't save Tom, and we sure didn't stop the Yeerks, but we gave them a reason to be afraid at least."
"Yeah, they're terrified of us. Visser 3 probably can't sleep at night. He's so worried about 5 kids," Marco said sarcastically. "Look, Visser 3 doesn't think we're a threat. He thinks we're lunch."
"He doesn't know who or what we are," I pointed out. "The Yeerks are convinced that we're Andalite warriors because they know that we can morph, and they know that we found the Yeerk pool and infiltrated it, and took out a few of their Taxons in Hork-Bajir while we were at it. I think they're probably a little nervous at least." Jake nodded.
"Rachel's right. But just the same, I don't think we want to try to go back to the Yeerk pool. Besides, the door is gone."
We all stopped and stared at him. He shrugged.
"Look, I just wanted to see if the door still worked, okay? Just in case. But it's not there anymore."
The door leading down to the Yeerk pool had been hidden in the janitor's closet of our school. There were dozens of doors to the underground Yeerk pool, spread all over the city, but this was the only one we knew about. "So we find another way to get at them," I said. "We can follow Tom again, when it's time for his Yeerk to return to the Yeerk pool. Yeerks have to go to the pool every 3 days. They drain out of their hosts' heads and soak up Kandrona rays."
"No. We leave Tom out of it," Jake said firmly. "If we call attention to him in any way, the Yeerks may decide he's trouble for them. They may decide to kill him."
Marco gave me a sour look.
"This is what you want to keep doing? Risking our lives and the lives of everyone we know? For what?"
"For freedom," Cassie said simply. Marco didn't have a smart answer to that.
"There's still Chapman," Jake said.
"Chapman is our assistant principal. He's also one of the most important human controllers. He runs the Sharing, the club that helps recruit unsuspecting kids into being hosts for the Yeerks."
"If there were some way for us to get close to Chapman."
Jake let the words hang in the air. He carefully didn't look at me, but I knew what he meant. He'd obviously been thinking about this for a while. "Melissa?" I asked. He nodded.
"It's a possibility."
"See, Melissa Chapman, Assistant Principal Chapman's daughter, is one of my closest friends. Or at least she used to be. The last few months, she'd been acting very strange toward me. Like she didn't care anymore. We take gymnastics together. Actually, we got into it at the same time. You know, something to do together. I don't like using a friend that way," I said.
"Oh, suddenly the mighty Rachel is weaseling?" Marco crowed. "You don't like using your friends? You're pretty willing to risk my life."
"Sure, Marco,
But who said you were my friend? Very funny, Marco said, but at the same time, he looked a little hurt. Kidding, Marco, I said. Just kidding. Of course you're my friend, but you're an animorph. Melissa is just an innocent bystander. I wish I had never come up with that word, Marco said. Animorph. Give me a break. Rachel, Melissa's father is one of the main controllers, Jake said gently, ignoring Marco. She's in this whether she likes it or not. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. Jake was right, of course. Chapman was the logical lead to follow, and Melissa was our way to get close. It made sense. It made sense for me to betray an old friend. It also made me feel like dirt.
Chapter 4.
The next day after school, I headed for my gymnastics class at the YMCA, which is just across from the mall. They have a big indoor pool, so the entire building always smells of chlorine, except for the weight room, which just smells like sweat. My class is taught in a smaller room, with blue mats covering the floor. We have balance beams and uneven parallel bars, and a vaulting horse with a springboard. I'm okay at vaulting in the parallel bars, but I'm pretty lame at the balance beam. To be honest with you, it kind of scares me. It takes such total concentration. It's not one of those real serious gymnastics classes. I mean, none of us is going to be going to the Olympics. When I started out, I had dreams of being the next Shannon Miller, but then I started to grow. I'm pretty tall now for my age. People look at me now and say, "Oh, you're going to be a model," not, "Oh, you could be a gymnast." Most of us in the class are too tall or too heavy to ever be serious gymnasts. We do it for fun and for exercise. I do it because I've always thought of myself as kind of clumsy. My mom says I'm not, but that's how I feel anyway. Besides, it's just cool, hitting the little springboard and flipping through the air to bounce off the vaulting horse and stick the landing. Not as cool as flying, maybe, but fun just the same. Melissa Chapman was in the locker room changing into her leotard when I came in. She's the exception to the rule in our class. She does look like a gymnast. She's small and thin, even though she doesn't starve herself, like some fools who want to get into gymnastics. She has pale gray eyes and pale blonde hair and pale skin. She looks like one of those solemn elves in a Tolkien book. At first glance, she looks delicate, but when you look a little closer, you see strength there too. Melissa gave me the kind of not very warm smile she always gives me lately, like she was distracted or thinking about something more important. "Hey, Melissa," I said. "How's it going?" "Fine. How about you?" "Oh, pretty much the same old thing." That was a lie, of course. But what was I going to say? "Yeah, Melissa, same old, same old. Been turning into animals and fighting aliens. You know, the usual." Melissa didn't say anything else. She just adjusted her leotard and started to do a few little stretches. That's the way it was. We said hi, but not much more. It used to be we were very close. She was my second best friend, after Cassie. "Melissa, I was thinking, maybe you'd like to walk over to the mall with me after class? I have to buy a new pair of sneaks." "The mall?" She stammered a little, and then started blushing. "You mean, go shopping?" "Yeah, you know, walk around and look at stuff and check out the cute guys and diss the snotty women at the perfume counters." I tried to sound casual, like it was no big deal. In the old days, it would have been totally nothing. But now, Melissa looked like a trapped animal. When had Melissa and I gotten to be such strangers? I'm kind of busy," Melissa said. "Oh, that's cool. I understand." But I didn't understand. Not at all.
started to walk away. I was going to let it go, but then I remembered. This wasn't just about a friend who had drifted away. This was about her father, one of the leaders of the Controllers, one of our most dangerous enemies. I grabbed her arm. Melissa, look, I feel like we've kind of gone in different ways, you know? And I miss you. She shrugged. Okay, well, maybe we could get together sometime. Not sometime, Melissa. That's just you blowing me off. What's going on with you? What's going on with me? She echoed. For a moment, a look of extraordinary sadness darkened her eyes and tugged downward at the corners of her mouth. Nothing is going on with me, she said. We'd better get out there, or Coach Elway will have a fit. She pulled her arm away. I just watched her go. I felt like a complete and total jerk. Something had happened to Melissa, and I hadn't even noticed. She was my friend, and something had changed in her, and I hadn't seen it. I'd just gone my own way, and now I was only acting like a concerned friend. The truth was, I was only paying attention for my own reasons. I wasn't able to concentrate on the lesson. Not concentrating when you're doing gymnastics can be painful. I slipped on the balance beam and banged my knee so badly I cried. Melissa was the first one to rush over, and for about 10 seconds, she was the old Melissa. But by the time I'd gotten back up, she was off across the room in her own little world again. It was right then that the terrible suspicions started. Melissa had been acting very strangely. Her father was a controller. I looked at her from across the room and felt a chill. Was she one too? Was my old friend Melissa a controller? I didn't go shopping after my lesson. I didn't really feel like it. Melissa's eyes, the way she had looked at me, kind of killed my urge to shop. I was supposed to head over to the mall, then call my mom when I was done to come pick me up. That was the plan. But since I didn't feel like mall crawling, I just headed home. Alone, with the sky growing dark as rain clouds moved in. It was stupid and careless of me, but I guess I was preoccupied with other things, although at least I had the sense to stay out of the construction site. I was walking down the sidewalk that runs along the boulevard when suddenly I realized that a car had pulled up just a little way down the sidewalk from me. A guy got out. He looked like he was in high school or even college. He also looked like trouble. I should have turned around and run back toward the mall, but sometimes I don't always do the sensible thing. Sometimes I regret not doing the sensible thing. This was one of those times. Hey, baby, he said. Want to go for a little ride? I shook my head and clutched my gym bag close. What an idiot I was to be so careless. Now, don't be stuck up, sweet thing, he said. I think you better get in the car. The way he said it didn't sound like an invitation. It sounded like an order. Now I was really afraid. I clutched my gym bag close as I passed him. Don't ignore me, he hissed. He reached for me and missed. I walked faster. He was behind me. I broke into a run. He ran after me. Hey there, come back here. I had been stupid going out alone, but fortunately, unlike most people, I wasn't helpless. As I ran, I focused on something completely different. I concentrated on an image in my mind. Then, I felt the change begin. My legs grew thick. My arms grew bigger. I could feel myself growing large and solid. I felt the squirmy sensation of my ears becoming thin and leathery. But it wasn't enough to just look creepy. This guy had made me mad. I wanted to scare him half to death. My nose suddenly began to sprout. Then from my mouth, like two huge spears, the tusks began to appear. I figured that was about enough. I broke my concentration, which stopped the morph. I stopped suddenly. The creep barreled right into me. He was not going to like what he was about to see.
Chapter 5.
I wanted to tell the jerk to step off. What I wanted to say to him was, "So, you still want to go for that ride?" What I really said was, The guy stopped dead. He just stared. What he saw was me, halfway through morphing into an African elephant. I had about a third of a trunk,
and most of my huge fan-like elephant ears. My legs were like stumps. My arms looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger's, only gray. And my tusks stuck about a foot out of my mouth. Just to make things extra weird, I still had my normal hair and my normal eyes. Suddenly, the guy wasn't interested in hassling me. Ah! He turned. He ran. For a minute, he forgot he even had a car. Then he turned around and jumped in through an open window. He started the car and took off. He was definitely breaking the speed limit as he tore out of there. I concentrated again and began to reverse the morphing process, going back to human shape. I had been wearing a loose sweater and leggings, which was good. They had both stretched, but my shoes had been split open by the sudden growth of my elephant feet. It had started raining, so the trip home was going to be very unpleasant. "Oh, great," I muttered. "I have got to remember to kick off my shoes before I morph into an elephant." Just then, a second car pulled up and came to a stop. The window rolled down. "Hey, Rachel." It was Melissa. I recognized the voice. "Do you want to ride home?" She didn't sound very excited by the idea. I looked through the car window, past her. Chapman was behind the wheel. A wave of sick fear swept over me. Had he seen what I'd just done? If he had, then I was dead. My friends were dead. I'm fine," I said. "I could use the exercise."
"Nonsense, young lady," Chapman said, sounding like his usual assistant principal self. "It's beginning to rain. Get in."
What was I supposed to do? I forced a smile. It wasn't easy. "Thanks," I said. Melissa was in the front with her father. I sat in the back. I tried not to shiver. I tried not to stare at the back of Chapman's head. That's how it is when you're around a controller. You know that evil slug is right there in the controller's head, attached to all his nerve endings, controlling the human brain, dominating it. It's hard not to stare when you think of what is squeezed inside that skull. "When we were stuck back at the red light, it looked like some guy was bothering you," Melissa said. "Then he ran off. Was he bothering you?" No," I lied. He was just picking up something he dropped by the side of the road." Pathetic! I was such a lame liar. I saw Chapman's eyes watching me in the rearview mirror. He looked like normal old Chapman. That's the problem with controllers. There is no outward clue. They look so normal.
"He went running off like the hounds of Hades were after him," Chapman said.
"Did he?" I said in a squeaky voice. I wasn't looking. I guess it was the rain. That's probably why he was running. "There. You can turn left there."
"I know where you live,"
Chapman said. I almost swallowed my tongue. Was that a threat? Did he suspect? Did he guess? Was he looking at me strangely? Or was I just being paranoid? He pulled up in front of my house. My heart was hammering, but I was determined to act casual. "Thanks for the ride, Mr. Chapman," I said. "Hey, Melissa, I was totally serious about us getting together, okay?" She nodded. "Sure, Rachel. Absolutely." I closed the car door behind me. I had escaped. I was alive. I'd probably just been imagining things. Then I heard Melissa call out to me. "Hey, what happened to your shoes?" I looked down. My shoes were in tatters, the result of my feet growing from a size 6 to a size 300 in about 5 seconds flat. "See?" I said, as lightly as I could. "I told you I needed to go shopping." Melissa just looked puzzled. Her father stared at me with an expression I could not read. I was shaking like a leaf when I walked into my house. I headed upstairs to my room and stuffed my ripped shoes into the trash. Only then did I go back downstairs and say hi to my mom. She was at the kitchen table, half hidden by a pile of buff-colored books. My mother's a lawyer, and she brings work home a lot so she can be around me and my 2 little sisters. She and my dad are divorced. I only get to see my dad a few days a month, so Mom feels guilty when she isn't there for us. "Hi, honey," she said. Then she got her suspicious mother look. "How did you get home? You didn't walk, did you? You were supposed to call me." "Melissa and her dad gave me a ride," I said. Well, it was the truth. Sort of. She relaxed and made a point of closing her book. "Sorry, you know I worry about you." "Where are Jordan and Sarah?" They're in the family room watching another one of those scary shows. Of course, tonight Jordan will be sleeping with her nightlight on, and Sarah will end up in my bed, no doubt. I don't know why they like things that frighten them. You were never that way. It almost made me laugh. I felt like saying, well, Mom, I don't have to watch things that are scary. I am scary. Should have seen me a little while ago with tusks sticking out of my mouth and a 3-foot-long nose. What I really said was, so what's for dinner? My mother winced. Pizza? Chinese? Anything else you can order over the phone? I'm sorry, but I have this brief and I have court in the morning. Mom, I told her for maybe the 1000th time, I don't mind pizza. Sorry, but your cooking isn't all that great, so it's no big deal ordering pizza. Well, at least get some veggies on it, she said. After dinner, I called Jake. Do you want to come over? I said. I got that new CD, if you want to listen to it. There was no CD, of course. It's just that we always have to be careful. Like I said, Jake's brother Tom is a controller. He could be listening on the extension. Then I called Cassie and Marco and told them the same cover story. When they arrived, I told them about Melissa, and then I told them about my little run-in with the creep. I did not tell them about Chapman driving me home. I don't know why, but when I saw the way Marco exploded, I was glad I hadn't told them the whole story. Oh, that was dumb! 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 Marco said. What if that guy is a controller? He wasn't a controller, I said scornfully. Why would the Yeerks want to make a controller out of a punk? They want people in positions of power. We don't know that for sure, Jake said. Tom isn't in a position of power. And how about people driving by in their cars, or looking out of the windows of their homes? Marco asked. And what if he runs and tells someone about this girl who suddenly sprouted a trunk and tusks? No one is going to believe a lowlife like that, I said. His friends won't believe him, Marco said poisonously, but a controller would believe him. A controller would know what it meant. Yes, a controller would know what it meant. A controller like Chapman, or even Melissa if she was one of them. I felt sick. It was like my whole life was nothing but lies. Lies to Melissa, lies to my mother. Now I was lying by not telling the others the whole truth. Okay, I screwed up, I muttered. You sure did, Marco crowed. You screwed up so... Marco let it drop, Jake said. Rachel knows she made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Marco rolled his eyes. Cassie gave me an encouraging smile. It was dumb putting yourself in that position, Rachel. You need to be more careful. But still, I'd have paid my next 10 allowances to see the look on that guy's face. The important thing is that it doesn't sound like Rachel can use Melissa to get close to Chapman, Jake said. Not if she's a controller herself, and not if she's going to continue being weird to Rachel. I guess we'll have to find another way, I said quickly. I mean, we know where Chapman's office is. We know where his house is. Maybe we could just morph into some small animals and hide out. Small animals like what? Marco asked. When Jake turned into a lizard, he got stepped on. He lost his tail. Besides, what are you going to morph into? A cockroach? We all shuddered at the thought. The smallest, strangest thing anyone had morphed so far was when Jake had done the lizard. It creeped him out big time. A roach would be even worse. The problem with being a cockroach, I said, aside from the fact that it is too gross to believe, is that roach senses might not even be useful to us. Can a roach hear in a way that would make it possible for us to understand what we're hearing? We all looked at Cassie. She's sort of our expert on animals. Cassie held up her hands. Oh, come on. Like I know how a cockroach sees and hears. We don't take care of roaches at the rehab clinic. We all sat there feeling glum for a few minutes. But I wasn't going to let it drop. This was about more than just striking a blow at the Yeerks. I had to find out if Chapman suspected me. If he did, we were all in terrible danger. I happened to glance over at my desk. There was my math homework, still not done. That didn't make me feel any better. But then I looked at the photos I had mounted in one of those big frames with 6 different holes. One was of me with my mom and dad on a whitewater rafting trip we took. One was of me visiting my dad at his job. He's a weatherman on TV. We were grinning in front of a map of storms. Another picture was of Cassie and me riding horses side by side, with Cassie, as usual, looking like she'd spent her entire life in the saddle, and me looking like a total dweeb. But the picture that got my attention was one taken a couple of years ago of Melissa and me. I got up and went over to take the frame down. I stared hard at the picture. "What?" Jake asked. "What is it?" "It's me and Melissa," I said. It was like her 12th birthday, or some birthday anyway, and we were out on her lawn playing with the present her dad gave her. "So what?" Marco asked. "So," I passed him the photograph. It showed me and Melissa in shorts, and between us, a small black and white kitten. So her present was a cat.
Chapter 6.
"Look, a kitty door," Jake pointed. "Where?" Marco asked. "See the lines of light at the bottom of the regular door?" "Oh yeah," Marco said. "I wish the moon were out. I can't see a thing." The four of us were cowering behind a hedge that bordered the Chapman's lawn. They lived in a pretty normal-looking suburban home. You know, 2 stories, a garage, a lawn. Nothing to make you think that the person who lived there was part of a huge alien conspiracy to take over the world. "Let me just ask you this," Marco whispered. "Why did it have to be Chapman? I was afraid of Chapman even before we found out he was a controller." "You're not still upset over that detention he gave you?" I asked. "Look, if you're going to listen to your CD player in math class with an earphone hidden under your hair, you have to remember not to start singing along." "Yeah, that was only slightly stupid, Marco," Jake agreed. "I still say Chapman never would have given me a whole week's detention if he was totally human." "I have a question," Cassie said. "How do we get Melissa's cat to come outside?" We all looked at her. "Good question," I admitted. "I mean, we could hide here in the bushes for a long time, but sooner or later the neighbors are going to notice."
"What does the cat look like?"
Tobias was sitting perched on a nearby tree branch. He was close enough to hear us. I tried to remember. "Its name is Fluffer. I remember that much. Fluffer McKitty." "You've got to be kidding." Marco, of course. I tried to remember back to when I used to hang out with Melissa. "It's black and white, you know, in patches."
"I'll look around. Maybe it's already outside."
Tobias spread his wings silently down over our heads and flapped away into the night. "You know what we need?" I said. "We need another kitty. We should have thought of that. Then we could have the second cat call out to Fluffer." Marco turned to stare at me. "Meow, Fluffer, come out, meow. Meow, come and play, meow." "Tobias morphed a cat very early on, didn't he?" I asked. "Yeah," Jake said. "His first morph. The first morph any of us did." "Rachel, you need to remember if you go in there tonight that you have to stay in cat character," Cassie said. "Most people would just think it was weird if a cat acted strangely, but Chapman may be able to guess what's going on if Fluffer suddenly starts acting uncat-like." "So you're saying I shouldn't try eating with a fork or changing the channels on the TV?" Everyone laughed, quietly and nervously, but it was laughter just the same. Suddenly, Tobias dropped out of the then drifted over us in a lazy circle and called down,
"Got him."
He settled back on the branch. He was really an amazing animal when you just looked at him as a bird and didn't think about him being a boy trapped in there. I mean, the gaze of a hawk, when it is looking right at you, is incredibly intimidating. Gentle Tobias now had an expression that looked totally ferocious. "You're kidding. You found Fluffer?" I asked.
"Hey, it's easy. Spotting prey is what I do. Or what a hawk does, anyway. Actually, there are maybe 6 or 8 cats running around the neighborhood. Also, 3 dogs, and an amazing amount of rats and mice."
"Rats?" That got Marco's attention. "Rats? Here? This is suburbia. I mean, it's a lot better than where I live." "They have rats?"
"There are rats everywhere,"
Tobias said.
"Rats and mice, and all kinds of plump, juicy."
He fell silent, embarrassed. "Get a grip, Tobias," Marco said. "Don't start eating rats, all right? I don't know if I can have someone who eats rats for a friend." Sometimes Marco is funny. Sometimes he goes too far. This was one of those times. "Shut up, Marco," I growled. "I ate a live spider," Jake pointed out.
Does that mean you and I can't be friends? From his tone of voice, I could tell he was angry too. None of us knew what Tobias was going through. None of us had ever been in morph for more than 2 hours. Tobias had been a hawk for more than a week. Marco realized he'd been a jerk.
Well, yeah, I guess you're right, he muttered. Besides, I've been known to eat eggplant, so I guess I can't criticize.
That was an apology, or as close as Marco could get to an actual apology.
The cat we're looking for is just a half block away,
Tobias said.
Follow me.
He flew off, but kept low. We took off after him. Even flying at minimum speed, Tobias was too fast for us to keep up with, so we had to circle back again and again. We had a hard time keeping him in sight. This doesn't look too strange, Cassie joked. The 4 of us running down the street, looking up in the sky.
There,
Tobias called down.
See that yard with the 2 trees?
Yeah, just to our left?
That's the one. The cat you're looking for is stalking a mouse, right behind the trunk of the nearest tree.
Okay, we can't all go traipsing over some stranger's yard, I pointed out. I'll go with Cassie. Marco held up the kitty carrier we had brought along.
Don't you need this?
Not yet. I'll grab Fluffer and bring him back over here. You 2 guys just stand here, looking casual. Cassie and I stepped onto the lawn. The house was dark. Maybe no one was home. That would be good. Go left, I suggested to Cassie. We circled the tree. Hey, Fluffer, I said in a high talking to animals voice. Here, kitty kitty. Remember me? There he is. I see him. I squatted down and held my hand out toward the cat. Hey, Fluffer, Fluffer. It's me, Rachel. Fluffer flattened his ears back along his skull. He looked from me to Cassie and back again. Come on, Fluffer. It's me. Come on, boy. He's a male? He's a tomcat? Cassie asked. Yeah, I think so. Oh, wonderful, Cassie moaned. Please tell me he's been fixed at least. Have you been fixed, Fluffer McKitty? I cooed. Why do we care? I asked Cassie. Because pound for pound, a tomcat is like one of the toughest, most dangerous little things around. Who, Fluffer? My little kitty friend Fluffer? Even if he is fixed, a male cat out at night in hunting mode? Cassie shook her head. We should have worn gloves. Oh, come on. He's a sweet kitty cat. To demonstrate just how sweet Fluffer was, I reached a hand for him. In a movement too fast for my eyes to see, Fluffer swiped out with one paw. 3 bloody scratches appeared on the back of my hand, and Fluffer shot straight up a tree. Ow! I stuck my injured hand to my mouth. Gloves would definitely have been a good idea, Cassie said. How are you guys doing? Jake whispered, just loudly enough for me to hear him. Wonderful, I said through gritted teeth. I'm bleeding and Fluffer is up the tree. I heard Marco giggle. I expected that. But then I heard Jake giggling too. I looked up and saw 2 glittering yellow-green eyes glaring down from the dark tree. This was supposed to be the easy part, I said. I figured, okay, we go and acquire Fluffer's DNA, and then the hard stuff begins. We have a cat up a tree, Cassie said dolefully. You know how hard it is to get a cat down out of a tree? I have a plan, I said. Tobias, are you up there?
Right above you, but I'm not going to try and snatch an angry tomcat down out of a tree.
That's not what I was going to ask, I said. I took a deep breath. This night was turning weird real fast. What I need is a mouse.
Chapter 7. Got something for you. A baby mouse. A mean baby mouse. It keeps trying to bite me.
Tobias flew in a low, tight circle overhead, disappearing behind the tree branches, then reappearing.
Are you ready?
I took a deep breath. I gave him a wave. Sure, I was ready. Why wouldn't I be ready to have a hawk hand me a mouse? Just your normal kind of thing to deal with. Tobias flew low and slow. I held out my hands, cupped together. With amazing precision and perfect timing, he deposited the mouse in my hands. Don't let it bite you, Cassie warned. Rabies. Wonderful, I muttered. Just one more fun aspect of this night. Actually, I was glad for the warning. The mouse was squirming in terror, trying to get away. I could feel its tiny little mouse legs scrabbling against my palms. You should all get rabies shots, Cassie said. Seriously, I already have mine, but if we're going to be handling wild animals... In the meantime, be careful to keep his teeth away from you. I wasn't planning on feeding him my finger, I said. Hey, wait. Cassie pried open my hands to get a better look. That's not a mouse. That's a shrew. See the eyes? They're too small. And the tail is wrong. That's not a baby mouse, Tobias. It's a full-grown shrew.
Sorry. Is that bad?
Cassie shrugged. I don't know. I just know it isn't a mouse.
Wait a minute, Marco said, beginning to grin. Rachel is going to become a shrew? How will we know when she's changed? How do you become what you already are?
Everyone was too nervous to find the joke very funny. We felt kind of stupid, standing around on some stranger's lawn playing with rodents. I mean, there are times when the whole thing just seems so utterly insane, you know? Okay, I have to concentrate on acquiring, so everyone shut up, I said. Acquiring is what we call it when we absorb a sample of the animal's DNA. The DNA is the stuff inside the cells that sort of serves like a how-to manual for making the animal. When you acquire, you have to think hard about the animal, focusing on it and blocking everything else out. Then the animal kind of goes limp, like it's in a trance. It takes just about a minute. It was easy to focus on the shrew, what with its squealing in terror and squirming to get out of my hand. But it was gross, definitely gross. I know there's nothing really wrong with shrews, but still, they freak me out a little. When I was done, I opened my eyes. Okay, little shrew, thanks for your help. You can go now. I'm not sure this is a good idea, Jake said doubtfully.
Really?
Marco was sarcastic.
You're not sure it's a good idea for Rachel to turn into a shrew in order to lure a vicious cat down from a tree so she can morph into that cat and sneak into the assistant principal's house? What worries you about that plan?
Cassie looked worried too. You know, Rachel, usually a cat will play with a mouse a little bit. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they go right for the neck bite. The mouse, or the shrew, dies instantly.
Be careful, Rachel,
Tobias said.
I'll be watching, but be careful. I don't want anything to happen to you.
He said it so only I could hear. I could tell because nobody else reacted. I looked up at Tobias and winked. I knew he would see it. I rubbed my hands together. Okay, let's do this. I concentrated once more on the shrew. The shrew was now a part of me. I don't know how it works, but it does. Somehow, thanks to the Andalite technology, the DNA of that shrew was stored away inside me. It was like having a map to guide me as I transformed. Not that I had a clue how I was able to do it. The first sensation was of shrinking. It's a long, long trip down from being 5 feet tall to being less than an inch tall. It's like falling, except that you can feel the ground under your feet the whole time. One minute I was looking Jake and Marco and Cassie in the face. The next minute their faces seemed to be zooming high up above me. I was falling down the length of their bodies. It was like they were huge skyscrapers, and I had jumped off the roof or something. My outer clothing fell around me like a big collapsing circus tent. It made a slight grinding noise as my backbone collapsed into a size smaller than my little finger. There was the disturbing, not quite pain sensation that goes along with some morphs. Like you knew it should hurt, but it didn't quite. I could feel the tail sprout from my tailbone. A long, hairless tail. Not at all attractive. My legs practically disappeared, they were so small. I was a chubby little ball of fur, no more than 2 inches long, with 4 tiny feet. Then the fear kicked in. The shrew's fear. It hit me so hard I began to shake. I rattled with terror. I quaked with terror. I was surrounded. Predators everywhere. I could smell them. I could see them. Huge, looming, slow-moving creatures standing over me. Rachel, you okay down there? It was Cassie. She lifted the folds of my clothing off of me. I heard the voice and sort of understood it, but it was more like distant thunder. It didn't really mean anything, at least not to the shrew. It was looking for a way out. Its brain might have been terrified, but it was also amazingly smart. It was evaluating every possible escape route.
It was measuring the distance between the 3 sets of legs. One set of legs moved slightly. I was off like a shot. Running! Running! Blades of grass seemed 6 feet tall. Twigs were like fallen trees that I had to scramble over. My little feet moved with incredible speed. I scooted past a beetle that seemed to me to be as big as a dog. Rachel, you have to get control. I knew they were right. I even sort of understood what they meant. But the terror was so strong. The urge to survive was so powerful. And at the same time, there were other feelings. Hunger. I smelled nuts. I smelled dead flesh. I even smelled the maggots squirming on the dead flesh. And I wanted them. I know it's too gross, but I wanted to eat those maggots. Heavy pounding footsteps behind me. I turned sharply and ducked under a bush. The steps went barreling by before stopping and turning back toward me. They were faster than I was, but not as agile. I could get away. I could get away and find that dead smell and gorge.
Rachel, it's Tobias. The shrew is in control. You have to assert yourself. Tell it to stop running.
Fear, hunger.
Rachel, listen to me. You're getting away from us. You have to take charge.
Fear, hunger, run! Grass and twigs and dirt, low scratchy branches over my head, the smell of food, the smell of a dog that had urinated on this bush. More loud footsteps and far-off rumbling voices yelling. They were trying to catch me, but I was fast. I was clever, but not clever enough. I ran out from under the bush. Like a shadow inside of a shadow, I felt it descend on me. Terror like nothing I'd felt before swept over me. Something deep, deep inside my shrew brain cried out. It was the ultimate fear, the ultimate horror. It was the enemy I could not defeat, and it was coming for me.
Chapter 8.
I dodged, but too slowly. Huge talons closed around me, and suddenly my little feet were running in air.
Okay, Rachel. It's okay. It's just me. I have you.
The voice was in my head. I understood the words. It cut through the terror at last. I held on to that voice.
Relax, Rachel.
I looked down, and with my dim shrew eyesight, saw the shadows shooting past down below.
I have you, Rachel. Try to be calm. Think about something human. Think about school. Remember school?
School? Yes, I remembered school. Quite suddenly, the shrew mind lost the battle for control. It was like a switch had been flipped. I was in charge. I knew what I was. I knew who I was.
I'm okay, Tobias,
I said.
You can set me down.
He circled around and landed with perfect gentleness on the ground.
Did my talons hurt you?
No, I don't think so. I'm fine.
You okay, Rachel? Jake's voice.
Yes. Boy, that was totally different than the elephant brain or the eagle. They're both so calm and mellow compared to this mind.
It's like Jake's lizard, Cassie suggested. He had a panic reaction too. The other animals we morphed were all kind of big, dominant animals. Gorilla, tiger. My horse was skittish, though.
Look, let's just do this and get it over with, okay?
I said.
I'm not enjoying the shrew experience.
That was the understatement of all time. I could still smell death and hear the thousands of feasting maggots. And to me, those things still meant dinner. I was horribly hungry. Are you sure you're going to be able to maintain down there? Marco asked. I saw him peering down at me from a million miles up. You still look a little nervous. Your tail is twitching and your little nose is sniffing like crazy.
Yeah, I know. I'm still nervous. Let's just do this. You'll have to take me back to the tree where Fluffer is. I don't know what direction it is.
Before I could object, Marco reached down and scooped me into his hands. He held me up and looked into my eyes. I've never seen you look lovelier, Rachel. Very cover girl. We walked down the block. Marco set me down at the bottom of the tree where Fluffer was still hiding out on a high branch.
You guys had better back off a little,
I said. Not too far, Jake said. We have to be able to get between you and Fluffer fast.
Oh, I can kick Fluffer's butt,
I said, joking. I guess I felt a little embarrassed about having let the shrew take control of me. Uh-huh, Marco said dryly. Cat versus mouse. Who would you bet on? Haven't you
Ever seen Itchy and Scratchy? Cassie asked. Mouse, definitely. Besides, she's not a mouse. Let me tell you something. It is no fun sitting around in a shrew's tiny body, waiting to see whether a huge cat is going to decide to climb down and kill you. It is one of the least fun things I've ever done. I had the shrew brain under control, but that didn't change the fact that the shrew was about as scared as a shrew can be. Between being snatched up by a hawk and now waiting to see if the shrew's other deadly enemy was going to attack, I mean, the shrew was definitely in a state of panic. She was not a happy shrew. I was so preoccupied thinking about the shrew's hunger that I missed what happened next. I didn't even notice until I heard the sound of scraping tree bark just an inch over my head. Fluffer was dropping through the air right on top of me. I froze. Jake and Marco did not freeze. Marco grabbed Fluffer in mid-pounce. Fluffer rewarded him with a nasty slash of his claws. Marco yelled and almost dropped the cat. Jake grabbed Fluffer by the nape of the neck, and Cassie ran up with the animal carrier. The three of them managed to stuff the squalling, hissing, slashing Fluffer into the carrier and closed the door. I was already morphing out of the shrew body as fast as I could. I'm bleeding, Marco cried. We're all bleeding, Cassie said matter-of-factly. I told you guys, kitties can be nasty when you get on their nerves. I was shooting up from the ground, regaining my normal body. Ugh, I am never doing that morph again, I said as soon as I had a normal tongue and lips. I looked over my shoulder to make sure I didn't still have that creepy tail. Nothing. I was me again. I was in my morphing outfit and with no shoes on, but I was human again. I shuddered. The memory of the shrew's brain and its fear and hunger made flesh creep. I was fighting a powerful urge to throw up. I felt sick in a way that is mostly in your head. Jake looked at me and shook his head. I should have done it. I should have used my lizard morph to lure the cat down from the tree. I shook my head. No, that freaked you out. And now you're the one who's freaked out, Jake said. But don't worry, you'll get over it. Mostly. At least you didn't eat a spider. Yeah. Look, I'm just tired, okay? Let me acquire this pain-in-the-butt cat and get on with this. Are you still up for it? Cassie asked. Acquiring 2 new morphs in one night? I shouldn't have let you do the mouse. Shrew, whatever, Jake said. He was still looking guilty. Look, it was my idea, right? Besides, since when do you let me do things? What are you, my master? I don't think so. Come on. I squared my shoulders and put on a brave smile. Let me see how Fluffer likes me, now that I'm bigger than he is. I guess Fluffer was tired of causing trouble. He was actually asleep in the cat carrier, sleeping like nothing at all was going on. A typical cat. He even purred as I acquired him. When I was done, I noticed Cassie smiling at me. What? I asked her. I was just thinking how you look like the same old Rachel, but now you also have an elephant, a shrew, an eagle, and a cat inside you. That's 4 morphs. That's more than any of us. She looked thoughtful. We don't really know very much about this morphing thing still. I wonder if there is a limit to how many morphs you can do.
I guess we'll find out, Marco said darkly. Probably at the worst possible time.
I wondered if they were right. It was definitely a strange, powerful feeling, knowing that I could become 4 very different animals. Strange and powerful and disturbing. Inside of me, I had animals that ate each other. It wasn't a good image. Suddenly, I felt exhausted. Look, guys, I've acquired Fluffer now, but maybe we should do the rest of this tomorrow night. I don't know if I'm at my best right now. Another night, Jake agreed. He looked relieved. I think he was worried about me. That's the way Jake is. I guess we can let Fluffer go now, Cassie said. She opened the carrier and the cat climbed out cautiously. I watched him run off into the night.
Probably going off to kill your shrew, Marco speculated.
The idea made me shudder all over again.
Chapter 9.
Ah! 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 Wake up! Rachel, wake up! Ah! 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 Oh. I sat up. I was gasping for air. It was dark, but I could just make out Jordan's face. She was shaking me awake. I felt my face, lips, eyes, nose. I patted myself down frantically. Human. I was human. No fur, no tail. Human. The details of the dream came rushing up to my consciousness. Oh no, I moaned. I threw back the covers and stumbled to my feet. I staggered toward the bathroom door. The bathroom connects my room and the room Jordan and Sarah share. I tried to turn on the light, but missed the switch. I dropped to my knees in front of the toilet and threw up. Jordan kept saying, "Are you all right, Rachel? Are you all right? I better get Mom." "No," I said as soon as I could talk. "No, I'm fine. Don't wake Mom up." Fortunately, little Sarah can sleep through anything. I brushed my teeth and drank some water. I looked sheepishly at Jordan. She looks nothing like me. I guess I look more like my dad, and Jordan is like this smaller version of my mom. Dark hair and dark eyes. She looked pretty scared. "I'm okay," I said again. "Just a bad dream. I guess it made me kind of sick is all. But I'm fine now." Jordan relaxed a little. "Must have been some dream." "I guess so. I can't even remember it now. You know how it is. Dreams fade away so you can't even remember them." "I can't believe you would just forget a dream that made you scream and hurl." I shrugged. "I've never been very good at remembering dreams. You better get back to bed." She looked at me solemnly. "I know I'm just your little sister by 2 years, but you would tell me if something bad was happening to you, right? I mean, I wouldn't tell Mom or anyone. You could trust me." I smiled and drew her into a hug. "I know I can trust you. If anything bad was going on, I'd tell you." It was a lie, of course, and the lie made me feel even worse. I trusted Jordan. I knew in my heart that she was not a controller. Of course, that's just what Jake had said about Tom. I hugged my sister a little closer. I hated the way suspicion had crept into every part of my mind. I hated the way I wasn't sure, not really, totally sure, that I could trust her. "Good night," I said. "Thanks for rescuing me from that nightmare, whatever it was." She started to walk away. Then she turned, lit from behind by the garish bathroom light. "Before you started screaming, you were yelling something." "What?" I asked, afraid of the answer. She looked puzzled. "I think it was maggots. Something like that." I forced a shaky smile. "Good night, Jordan." I crawled back into my bed. The pillow was soaked with sweat. The sheets were clammy. Maggots. Squirming, crawling, busy little white maggots. They were all over a piece of rotting meat and fur. In my dream, it was a dead cat. A dead cat covered with vermin eating the decayed flesh. A shrew was getting in on the feast, eating the dead flesh and the living maggots with equal enjoyment. In my dream, I knew I was that shrew. "You look tired," Jake said the next morning. "We took the same bus to school." "Thanks," I said grumpily. "Didn't get enough sleep last night?" "I guess not, if I look as bad as you say." "I didn't say you looked bad. I just said you looked tired." He hesitated. He glanced over his shoulder, checking to see whether anyone was listening. Fortunately, the noise level was pretty high in the bus. Jake lowered his voice and leaned close to my ear. "You didn't get creeped out by the shrew, did you?" "Why? Just because I'm a girl, you think the shrew bothered me more than it would have bothered you or Marco?" "No, that's not it at all," he said earnestly. "It's just... See, when I did the lizard morph, that bothered me. I had nightmares." "Nightmares?" I said it too loudly. Then I lowered my voice back to a whisper. "Nightmares?" "Oh yeah, definitely. When I morphed the tiger, I had dreams too. But not nightmares." "What kind of dreams?" He smiled. "Kinda cool, really. Stalking through a dark forest at night. I was hunting something. It was like I wanted to catch it. But at the same time, it was like if I didn't catch it, that would be okay too. Because just running and creeping and then running some more through the woods was the best thing in the world." I nodded. I felt like that after the elephant morph. It was this incredible feeling of being huge and invincible, like I could never even possibly be afraid of anything. But the shrew was different, wasn't it? Same with the lizard. I guess it's the different characters of the animals. Maybe some are good matches for our human brains. Maybe others aren't. I looked out the window for a while. Then I said, "You know what scares me?" To my surprise, Jake nodded. "Yeah. You're afraid that someday we might have to morph into bugs." I shuddered. "I don't think I'll be willing to do that. I think that may be too much." "Well, your next assignment is a cat. Tobias was a cat. He said it was amazingly cool. He liked it. Just like I really enjoy being a dog. Sometimes when I'm feeling depressed, I really wish I could just morph. Dogs know how to have fun." The bus pulled up in front of the school. Another day of school. Normal life. I looked over the crowd of kids milling around on the lawn and on the steps. I spotted Melissa. "See you later, Jake," I said. "Thanks." "No problem. We're all in this together." I made my way down the bus aisle and ran to catch up to Melissa. But when I got close, I saw that her eyes were red and swollen. She'd been crying. I didn't know what to do. In the old days, I would have just run right up to her and asked what was the matter. "Hey, Melissa, how's it going?" She looked at me, confused. "What?" I said, "How's it going?" She shook her head slowly, like she couldn't believe I was even talking to her. "What do you care?" "Melissa, of course I care. What's wrong?" Her eyes went kind of blank. She seemed to be looking at nothing but the air right in front of her face. "What's wrong? Everything is wrong. And nothing is wrong. But just the same, everything is wrong." "Melissa, what are you talking about?" "Forget it," she said. She started to walk away. I grabbed her arm. Look, you can talk to me. I'm still your friend. Nothing has changed. Leave me alone, she said grimly. Everything has changed. Everyone has changed. You stopped being my friend, and my mom and dad. What? I pressed her. The bell rang loud and shrill. I have to go. She pulled her arm away. What could I do? I let her go. I wondered what she had started to say about her father. Had she discovered what her father was? What her father had become? I walked up the steps of the school with my head lowered in thought. As I opened the school door, I ran right into someone.
Hey, hey, watch where you're going, young lady.
Mr. Chapman! I recoiled in fear. See, you have to realize that this was the man who had once directed a Hork-Bajir soldier to kill us all if he caught us. Kill us and only save our heads for identification. That kind of thing sticks in your mind. He peered at me.
What's the matter with you, Rachel? A little jumpy this morning?
I nodded. Yes, sir. I guess I didn't sleep too well.
Bad dreams?
He asked. My mouth was dry. I guess so, Mr. Chapman. He smiled. A normal, human smile. His eyes even crinkled up a little as he grinned down at me.
Well, shake it off. Nightmares aren't real, you know.
At least not most of the time, I said to myself.
Chapter 10.
We couldn't go to the Chapmans the next night because Marco and I both had papers we had to write, and the night after that was Cassie's dad's birthday. But finally, there we were again on the street outside the Chapmans' house. It was a little before 8. Fluffer was out of the house, smelling a fence post 4 blocks over where another cat had left his scent. At least, that's what Tobias reported. Are you ready? Jake asked me. I nodded. Are you sure? Cassie asked. You can put this off if you want. We don't have to do this tonight. The sooner the better, I said. We all know something is wrong in that house. Melissa is still my friend. Maybe somehow I can help her.
Your job is not to help Melissa Chapman, Marco pointed out. You're supposed to be spying on Chapman. You're supposed to be finding some way for us to get at the Yeerks so that we can all turn into wild animals and get ourselves killed.
I know why I'm doing this, Marco, I said. He nodded.
Okay, well, take care of yourself in there. That's an assistant principal you're dealing with. He finds out you've turned into a cat and gone sneaking around his house. That will be after-school detention for like a year.
We all laughed, as if detention were the thing I had to fear. Marco can be obnoxious, but on the other hand, he can make you laugh right when you really need to. I'm ready, I said. I waved my arms at the dark sky above. Tobias swooped down, opened his wings to slow his speed, and settled on the fence beside us.
How does it look up there, Tobias?
Jake asked.
Looks fine. The cat is nowhere near the house. There's no one out walking around, except way over on Laughlin Street. There are a couple of cars, but not coming toward you.
You know, you have quite a future in burglary, Marco said to Tobias. You and I can burglarize places, and Jake can be Spider-Man and catch us.
Okay, I'm ready to do this, I announced. As ready as I'm going to get anyway. Tobias sent me a private message.
Rachel, if you get into any trouble, just try and make it outside. I can lift you out of any danger.
I prepared to morph. I concentrated on Fluffer. It was easy to do. I had a very clear mental image of Fluffer dropping down out of that tree, ready to kill me when I was a shrew. Inside my own body, Fluffer's DNA was stored, ready to be used. All I had to do was concentrate. Concentrate. Each morphing is different, especially the first time, when you can't even think about controlling how it happens. Even Cassie can't control the first morph. In the case of Fluffer, it started with